Chapter 1206. Seeing that Yun Jian had returned with Xiao Yunzhu and Yun Jian with a big bag of snacks, Mrs. Yang quickly told Qin Yiru, they're back. As she spoke, Mrs. Yang went over to help Yun Jian carry the large and heavy plastic bag in a friendly manner. Yun Jian thanked her politely. Auntie Yang. Xiao Yunzhu and Yun Jian ran to Mrs. Yang and greeted her affectionately. There's mung bean soup in the kitchen. Xiao Jian, bring Xiao Zhu and the rest to get it. Qin Yiru stopped what she was doing and told Yun Jian. Yun Jian nodded softly. Just as Yun Jian said that, the door opened again and Yun Yi came in. Just as Yun Yi entered, another petite figure followed closely. Yun Jian narrowed her eyes when she saw Yun Yi pulling Qin Yu in. Qin Yu let go of Yun Yi's hand shyly the moment she entered the house with Yun Yi. Hello, Sister Jian, Auntie, Qin Yu greeted Yun Jian and Qin Yiru. You came at the right time. There's mung bean soup in the kitchen. Go get it. Qin Yiru pretended not to see Qin Yu and Yun Yi holding hands and stood up as she spoke. Qin Yu was going on this trip as well. After the group was done with the mung bean soup, they returned to their rooms and sleepwalked. When Yun Jian returned to her and Si Yi's villa, she was not in a hurry to sleep. Instead, she took out her tablet and logged into the secret assassin website that she had not logged in for a long time. Just as she logged in with the code name Slaying God, a pop-up window popped up. Yun Jian narrowed her eyes and clicked on it, but her attention was attracted by the black headline on the webpage. It said, the Third Global Underground Tea Party was held in country B on August 1, 1999. Yun Jian's eyes flashed when she saw the title. Don't be fooled by the name of the gathering. The Third Global Underground Tea Party. If ordinary people saw these words, they would only think that it was a gathering of international bigwigs. However, with the word underground, the meaning was completely different. Yun Jian didn't want to talk too much about it. In short, the word on the ground meant that the people attending this gathering were either secret agents, killers, or members of international mercenary groups. To put it bluntly, this was a global gathering of the underground forces. Such underground gatherings were rarely held. So far, there had only been 2 such gatherings in the world. Yun Jian had participated in it once. At that time, she was just a nobody on the secret agent list. However, he did not expect that the Third Underground Tea Party would be held soon. Beep beep beep. Right then, a pop-up window popped up on the webpage. Yun Jian opened the chat window and saw that it was Snake Lizard who was looking for her. The message displayed in the chat window was simple and clear. It said, Slaying, the Third Underground Tea Party is starting soon. Do you want to go? The words, Tea Party, were obviously a cover-up for the underground forces. The people attending this gathering were either killers or secret agents. To put it bluntly, this was a meet and greet for the secret agents and killers. The lights were off in the room. Yun Jian stared at the computer screen for 2 seconds. In the dark, her lips curled into a slight smile. After a pause, Yun Jian reached out and typed a word on the laptop keyboard swiftly with her fingers before clicking send. Chapter 1207. After Yun Jian sent the message, Snake Lizard's short reply popped up in less than 2 seconds, okay. After seeing Snake Lizard's reply, Yun Jian stopped smiling. She closed her laptop and put it on the bedside table, then turned over and fell asleep. August 1, 1999. There was still some time until now. The next morning, Yun Jian was used to waking up early because the train ticket was booked at 7:30 a.m. She woke up at 5 a.m. Breakfast was ready when she came back from her usual workout. After breakfast, Qin Yiru brought a group of people to Mrs. Yang's house to wait for her family. Mrs. Yang cleaned up quite quickly, but her son dragged his feet. He dragged his feet for a full 20 minutes before he came out. Mrs. Yang had a son and a daughter. Her son's name was Yang Lin, and her daughter's name was Yang Xiao. Yang Xiao was a very obedient little girl. She was only 14 years old, 2 years younger than Yun Jian. When Mrs. Yang and Qin Yiru were close, her daughter, Yang Xiao, often went to Yunjian's house to play. Lan Su was still there at that time. Yang Xiao and Lan Su got along quite well, and they even became friends. So Yunjian knew Yang Xiao too. When she saw Yunjian, Yang Xiao stuck her tongue out at Yunjian, then called out softly, "Big sister." After that, Yang Xiao asked Yunjian, "Big sister, why didn't big sister Lan Su come?" "She went back to her hometown." "She won't be back for a while," Yunjian said naturally. Oh. Yang Xiao and Lan Su got along well, so she was a little disappointed when she heard that Lan Su didn't come. At that moment, Mrs. Yang's son, Yang Lin, finally walked out of the house with his hands behind his head. He looked like a hooligan. "Why did you come out so late? What were you doing?" Mrs. Yang scolded her son in a low voice. Then, she turned around and looked at Qin Yiru apologetically. Mrs. Yang smiled apologetically and said to Qin Yiru, "My Lin is a little late. We can set off now." "It's okay." "Huh, it's normal for children to like to sleep in the morning." Qin Yiru laughed. Just as he finished speaking, Yang Lin's slightly lazy but hooligan-like voice sounded again, "Wait, my girlfriend and my friend want to go too." Yang Lin was already in his 20s, so it wasn't strange for him to have a girlfriend. Mrs. Yang resisted the urge to scold her son and forced herself not to curse out loud. "It's almost time to leave." "Where are they?" Yunjian was standing not far away. When she saw Yang Lin like this, she knew that Mrs. Yang couldn't control her idol son even if she wanted to. Yunjian smiled slightly and adjusted the sling bag on her shoulder. "Mom, what's the hurry? Didn't they say that they're coming?" Yang Lin acted as if it had nothing to do with him. As soon as Yang Lin finished speaking, he pointed at the two figures not far away who seemed to be in a hurry and said, "Look, aren't they here?" As soon as Yang Lin finished speaking, the two figures appeared in front of everyone. Yang Lin's girlfriend, Lu Mei, had a lot of makeup on and looked a little scary. Yang Lin's friend was called Zhang Jin. Yang Lin's friend also dyed his hair blonde and wore earrings. One look and anyone could tell that he was a delinquent. When Yang Lin's girlfriend walked over, she saw Yunjian standing not far away. Yunjian was dressed neatly. Even if she was wearing clothes from a street stall, it couldn't hide her dazzling radiance. Lu Mei was quite good-looking herself. When she saw Yunjian, a girl who was prettier than her, the faint feeling of displeasure in her heart instantly exploded. Especially from Lu Mei's appearance, one could tell that she was a person who paid a lot of attention to her appearance. Lu Mei glared at Yunjian and then walked to Yang Lin. She didn't care that Yang Lin's mother, Mrs. Yang, was still there. She walked over and hugged Yang Lin, kissing him in front of everyone. "Honey, I'm here," Lu Mei said coquettishly. Then she turned to look at Yunjian and Qin Yiru. Seeing that Yunjian and Qin Yiru were all wearing ordinary clothes without any branded clothes, Lu Mei scolded them in front of Mrs. Yang and said to Yang Lin. Chapter 1208. Especially when she saw Qin Yiru, Lu Mei's deep disgust was even more obvious. Usually, people of Lu Mei's age would not be willing to team up with people in their 40s or 50s for a trip because there would be a generation gap. Especially when she saw Qin Yiru, Lu Mei was even more disgusted. Although her family's financial situation had improved, Qin Yiru was used to wearing clothes bought from the roadside. These clothes and pants were just street goods that people kept talking about. Lu Mei saw Qin Yiru and Yunjian's ordinary clothes and knew that they did not come from a rich family. That was why she said that Qin Yiru and Yunjian were country bumpkins. Moreover, Lu Mei did not give any face to her boyfriend, Yang Lin's mother, Mrs. Yang. After that, Lu Mei even tucked her extra hair behind her ear, pretending to be very fashionable. Mrs. Yang did not expect her rebellious son to find such a condescending girlfriend. She was exasperated at her son's failure to live up to her expectations. At the same time, Mrs. Yang was so angry that she scolded her son for finding a woman like Lu Mei. "Lin, Yiru is my good friend. You'd better keep your girlfriend in check or we won't welcome her." Although Mrs. Yang usually looked gentle and weak, she was actually a very strong-willed woman. Lu Mei had criticized Qin Yiru and Yun Jian in front of Mrs. Yang just now, and it had infuriated Mrs. Yang, so she retorted directly. Mrs. Yang's meaning was very clear. She was warning Lu Mei that this trip was organized by her and Qin Yiru's family. If Lu Mei disliked them, she could get lost. Lu Mei was shocked by Mrs. Yang's words. Then, Lu Mei was afraid that Mrs. Yang would really not allow her to go with them, so Lu Mei's arrogant face instantly changed. At the same time, Lu Mei looked at Mrs. Yang with a fawning expression on her heavily made-up face. "Auntie, I've always been outspoken. If I say anything bad, please don't blame me." Although Lu Mei said so, she was rolling her eyes in her heart at this moment. However, she was thinking, is Yang Lin's mother crazy? She's actually helping Qin Yiru's family, who are dressed like country bumpkins and are obviously poor. Lu Mei had long forgotten that she used to be poor too. Later on, she had a few rich boyfriends and served them well. That was how she became the current her, who was dressed in branded clothes from head to toe. As for Yang Lin, to be honest, he was Lu Mei's financial backer. But in fact, Lu Mei wanted to marry into the Yang family, so she immediately admitted her mistake after hearing Mrs. Yang's words. Mrs. Yang's mother, Lu's mother's. There was a glint in Yun Jian's eyes before she narrowed them. Obviously, Lu Mei was hostile to him. She had never met Lu Mei, so she didn't know why Lu Mei was hostile. However, Yun Jian always kept her own principles. As long as Lu Mei didn't provoke her or Qin Yiru, Yun Jian wouldn't do anything to her. They took the city bus and soon arrived at the East bus station. After the ticket was checked, they got on the bus. Mrs. Yang and her family got on the bus first. Yun Jian, Qin Yiru, and Lu Mei were one step behind because they went to the bathroom. They walked from the flat ground to the steps of the bus. Lu Mei walked in the front, followed by Qin Yiru. They were about to get on the bus. Yun Jian just came out of the bathroom and came here. The bathroom was only a dozen meters away from the bus stop. When Yun Jian came out of the bathroom, she saw Qin Yiru was about to go up the steps. Lu Mei, who was blocking the steps, suddenly showed a sinister smile. Yun Jian could still see Lu Mei silently say to Qin Yiru, "Ha, country bumpkin." Before she could finish her words, Lu Mei shoved Qin Yiru's foot that was stepping on the steps of the bus in a seemingly unintentional manner. This push pushed Qin Yiru's foot out of the last step of the bus. Chapter 1209. Lu Mei purposely pushed Qin Yiru, trying to make her fall down the stairs. No one saw her move, but Yun Jian happened to see it. Mrs. Yang, who was sitting on the bus, immediately noticed that Qin Yiru had lost her footing just as she was about to get on the bus. She fell half a meter off the ground with her back facing the ground. Mrs. Yang, who witnessed the scene, stood up in shock. She dashed over, shouting desperately at the same time, "Yiru!" However, Qin Yiru had already fallen down with her back facing the ground at an astonishing speed. Qin Yiru was already older, in her 40s. She was in her middle age, but her bones had hardened with age. If she fell like this, she would definitely be in trouble. "Mom!" Yun Yi, who was sitting on her seat, quickly stood up and ran toward Qin Yiru when she saw this. However, the speed of falling was always faster than the speed of running. Lu Mei looked innocent on the surface, but the corners of her lips were slightly curled into a faint smile. Lu Mei's lips suddenly stiffened in the next second. After the ticket was checked, Mrs. Yang and the rest sat on the bus. There were many long-distance buses parked beside the bus, and the surrounding buses were also filled with people. Just as the crowd inadvertently caught a glimpse of a petite figure dashing toward the bus to Serene City from the restroom at the speed of a falcon, the crowd turned around to look. The people around all turned their heads and glanced over. In the next second, everyone present widened their eyes as they accepted the frightening scene that was about to unfold before their very eyes. From the toilet a dozen meters away from the bus, Yun Jian sprinted toward the bus like a sprinting leopard or a falcon that had spotted a scrumptious meal. Could it be that she's going to save the woman who fell down from the bus over there? The crowd finally realized that Qin Yiru had accidentally fallen down the stairs of the bus. If Qin Yiru fell down, she would definitely be in trouble. On the other side, Yun Jian was running towards Qin Yiru like a gust of wind. The passengers sitting on the surrounding buses were all dumbfounded as they stared at this scene with their eyes wide open. That place was more than 10 meters away from where she was. How could she possibly catch it? Some people thought that they could already see the scene of Qin Yiru falling head first onto the ground. If her head hit the ground first, Qin Yiru would definitely be seriously injured. In fact, it wasn't impossible for such a serious injury to cause problems from the fall. However, before this person could finish shouting in shock, Qin Yi suddenly stopped. Everyone only felt a gust of wind flash past them. In the next second, Yun Jian flashed past. She saw that it was too late for her to reach out to support Qin Yiru, who was about to fall to the ground. Hence, she threw herself towards Qin Yiru. Could it be that she's thinking of? Someone saw Yun Jian's action and was stunned on the spot. However, Yun Jian didn't wait for this group of people to finish shouting in shock. She had already thrown herself onto the ground where Qin Yiru had fallen from more than 10 meters away. The speed of Qin Yiru falling from the air to the ground was definitely less than 4 seconds. If Yun Jian was running, it was absolutely impossible for her to react from more than 10 meters away and reach out to catch Qin Yiru. However, it was different for her to throw herself horizontally. When she threw herself horizontally, Yun Jian's entire body was propelled forward. When she ran to the last step, her whole body happened to fall horizontally onto the ground on this side. Her speed was also unbelievably fast. However, just as Yun Jian threw herself horizontally and used her own body as a meat cushion, the surrounding people were still shocked by Yun Jian's speed, which was faster than a cheetah's running speed. With a bang, Qin Yiru's entire body landed squarely on Yun Jian's body. After being bounced by the soft meat cushion, Qin Yiru was naturally fine. However, even from a distance, the surrounding people could feel the pressure that Yun Jian was under from that smash. Hence, the surrounding people couldn't help but gasp. She was caught? On the other hand, Lu Mei, who was in the car, was completely shocked by Yun Jian's astonishing speed. She could actually react from more than 10 meters away and throw herself over in just a few seconds. Chapter 12:10. Yun Jian had indeed suffered a heavy blow. She groaned, but she did not cry out in pain. Just like that, she caught Qin Yiru's body and did not let Qin Yiru show any signs of injury. This scene caused an uproar in the crowd. What caused an uproar was Yun Jian's running speed. Was she an athlete? How could she run from such a distance? Secondly, when she saw that Qin Yiru was in danger, Yun Jian did not even think about what would happen if she took such a heavy blow. She rushed forward without hesitation and used her own body as a cushion to save Qin Yiru's life. How strong and determined must she be to rush forward and use her own body to take the hit for Qin Yiru? While everyone was still in shock, Yun Yi had already jumped down from the bus. Then, she walked over and helped Qin Yiru, who had fallen on Yun Jian, up. "Mom. Are you hurt?" Yun Yi had trained with Yun Jian for a long time, so her strength had improved tremendously. Therefore, when she jumped down from the bus just now, Yun Yi was very agile. Just as she helped Qin Yiru up, Yun Yi glanced at Yun Jian. Then, she hurriedly went to help Yun Jian up. Although Qin Yiru had fallen down heavily, Yun Jian, who had acted as a cushion for Qin Yiru, had suffered a heavy blow. Yun Yi naturally knew that Yun Jian's condition was worse than Qin Yiru's. Therefore, after helping Qin Yiru up, Yun Yi immediately bent down to help Yun Jian. When the surrounding people saw that Qin Yiru was helped up by Yun Yi, they all gasped. They saw that Yun Jian was heavily pressed down by Qin Yiru. Especially when Yun Jian's thin and weak body was pressed down by Qin Yiru's slightly fuller body, she should not be able to stand up. When Mrs. Yang saw this scene, she quickly ran down. Gu Junjian also ran over immediately. Xiao Yunzhu and the other two were so scared that they almost cried. In the nearby bus, all the passengers saw this scene in front of them. They faintly felt that Yun Jian must have been pressed down by this force and could not stand up. The moment Yun Yi bent down to help Yun Jian up, Yun Jian's eyes widened. Yun Jian, on the other hand, flipped over on the floor like nothing had happened and stood up handsomely. The surrounding people held their breaths when they saw the scene. They were overwhelmed with shock. Yun Jian's petite frame stood up like nothing had happened after she was pressed down by Qin Yiru. What? What kind of joke was this? Could this girl be a member of the Special Forces? In the movies, the Special Forces acted exactly like this girl just now when they were saving people. Xiao Jian, how are you? Are you hurt anywhere? Let me take a look. Qin Yiru was startled as she ran to Yun Jian to take a few glances. Yun Jian's eyes were dark as she told Qin Yiru softly to reassure her, "Mom, I'm fine." After Qin Yiru repeatedly confirmed that she was fine, Qin Yiru was persuaded by Yun Jian to get on the bus. Even Qin Yiru did not realize that her accidental step was not an accident. When the passengers on the long-distance buses that were parked nearby saw Yun Jian get on the bus, they thought that the incident was over. Just as she was thinking about it, she saw a woman dressed in branded clothes being tossed off the bus not long after Yun Jian boarded it. She was dressed to the nines from head to toe. All they saw was the woman being thrown to the ground. Before she could react to the excruciating pain, 5 flying daggers flew past her head and sides at a frightening distance before stabbing into the ground. Chapter 12:11. Of the 5 throwing knives, 1 flew over Lu Mei's head, while the other 4 flew over Lu Mei's left and right arms respectively. Before the crowd recovered from the shock of seeing this frightening throwing knife skill, they heard Yun Jian's following words. Did these 5 frightening throwing knives fly out from Yun Jian's hands? Did they fly out from Yun Jian's hands, a little girl who looked like she was only in her teens? Moreover, these 5 throwing knives directly flew over Lu Mei's body. Wasn't this a skill that could only be seen in the circus? How old was this little girl? What shocked the crowd was Yun Jian's following words. Just now, Qin Yiru fell down from the car. Was it this woman who did it? Moreover, Yun Jian's arrogant words made the people present have to look at her in a new light. In this era, there was no security check at the bus station. Even if someone brought a knife, no one would care. Therefore, the crowd was not surprised that Yun Jian brought a knife. The crowd was only surprised and shocked by Yun Jian's throwing knife skill. Mimi, are you okay? At this time, Mrs. Yang's son, Yang Lin, rushed out of the car to help Lu Mei. Lu Mei was thrown out of the car by Yun Jian, but just landed on the ground. When Lu Mei landed, it was exactly the same as when Lu Mei pushed Qin Yiru. Yun Jian returned the pain that Qin Yiru was going to suffer when she threw Lu Mei out of the car. Therefore, while Lu Mei was frightened by Yun Jian, she was so shocked by the pain that she didn't see the 5 throwing knives that flew past her body. Seeing Yang Lin, Lu Mei couldn't stand up, but she hugged Yang Lin, who was squatting down, and leaned her chest on Yang Lin's arm in front of the crowd. At the same time, she endured the pain and was afraid of Yun Jian. At this time, she regretted treating Qin Yiru like that. Therefore, Lu Mei put her chest on Yang Lin's arm and asked for help. Lin, I'm so scared. She framed me. My butt hurts. When Lu Mei leaned on Yang Lin, her fear of Yun Jian was mostly gone. Yang Lin was a gangster, so he knew a lot of people. Therefore, after being protected by Yang Lin, Lu Mei didn't feel so afraid of Yun Jian. Especially at this time, Zhang Jin, who was with Lu Mei and Yang Lin, also stood out. He had dyed his hair blonde and wore a fashionable earring. That's too much. You're framing someone without any evidence. Why are young ladies nowadays so wicked? Zhang Jin spoke up for Lu Mei as soon as he stepped up to attack Yun Jian. Yun Jian sneered. She slowly walked down from the bus and looked at Lu Mei and the others, who felt very proud after being protected. You want proof, huh? Yun Jian strolled to Lu Mei with a menacing smirk. Just now, Qin Yiru was almost thrown to the ground. Yun Jian's bottom line was touched again. She didn't care about the opinions of the people around her and walked toward Lu Mei. You. What are you doing? Zhang Jin stood in front of Lu Mei and acted like he was protecting the vulnerable. Didn't you want evidence? Of course, I'm. Yun Jian broke into a smile in front of everyone. After a pause, she continued, I'm giving you the evidence you want. As soon as this flat and emotionless sentence was finished, Yun Jian strode forward and stretched out her slender legs. Her long black tights wrapped around her perfect legs incisively and vividly. She sent Zhang Jin flying with a kick and continued to make her way to Lu Mei under everyone's fearful gaze. When Yun Jian kicked Zhang Jin away just now, because Yun Jian was wearing black tights, her clean kick was like a killer agent in a movie. Chapter 12:12. Yun Jian's pace was slow as she made her way to Lu Mei, who was on the ground. It took her a while to take a few steps. When Lu Mei and Yang Lin saw that Yun Jian had sent Zhang Jin flying with a kick, the young couple who were brimming with vigor paled in fright. Under the morning sun, Yun Jian's high ponytail made her look beautiful. Yun Jian was wearing a pair of black tights, which outlined her perfect curves. Her upper body was also tight, and her full breasts were vividly displayed in front of everyone. Her face was terrifyingly gloomy. When Yun Jian sent Zhang Jin flying with her kick just now, everyone had the illusion that they were watching a secret agent from a movie. No, this teenage girl in front of them was more like a special agent than the special agent in the movie. No matter how sharp the special agent's eyes were in the movie, no matter how thoroughly they portrayed their expressions, they were not as sharp as the teenage girl in front of them. They were also not as handsome as the teenage girl in front of them. Especially when they saw Lu Mei's image of a delicate, soft, and coquettish woman, the passengers sitting on the several long-distance buses almost applauded Yun Jian. Hit her! Hit her! Hit her! Some people even roared in their hearts. Some people were born unlikable, while some people's words and actions gave people a feeling of superiority and admiration from the bottom of their hearts. Lu Mei belonged to the former, and Yun Jian belonged to the latter. Mrs. Yang, who was standing in the bus, looked very bad. As for Qin Yiru, she was dizzy from the fall just now. Qin Yiru's body was not particularly good, and the fall just now made Qin Yiru even more dizzy. At this moment, Yun Yi and Gu Junjian were taking care of her. Mrs. Yang hated that she brought her son, Yang Lin, on a trip. What kind of woman did her son find? Mrs. Yang believed Yun Jian's words, very much. So at this moment, Mrs. Yang's first thought was to tell her son to dump this vicious woman Lu Mei as soon as they came back from the trip. At the moment when everyone was thinking, Yun Jian stepped forward and stood in front of Lu Mei. Lu Mei grabbed Yang Lin's hand tightly and looked at Yun Jian. She was so scared that her whole body was trembling. Because there were so many people around the bus watching, Lu Mei thought that she could not lose face. So, Lu Mei stretched her neck, glanced at Yun Jian, and then said in a trembling voice, You. Don't come over, or I'll. At this moment, Lu Mei still wanted to threaten Yun Jian, but in fact, she did not have anything to threaten Yun Jian. Yun Jian sneered. In the next second, under everyone's exclamation, Yun Jian suddenly jumped up with one foot and rushed toward Lu Mei. At this time, Yang Lin was scared half to death. When he thought of Zhang Jin being kicked by Yun Jian, he did not care about Lu Mei at this moment. Because of fear, Yang Lin forcibly pulled away Lu Mei's hand that was holding him and hid far away. Ah! Lin, you. Lu Mei didn't expect that at the last moment, her boyfriend would dodge by himself. It was just that his voice was drowned out by Yun Jian's ruthless kick. Yun Jian sent Lu Mei sprawling on the ground with a kick before she followed closely behind her. Then, under everyone's exclamation, Yun Jian stepped on Lu Mei's head and stomped hard. Lu Mei was almost suffocated by Yun Jian's foot. The people around were frightened by Yun Jian's violent behavior. This is going to kill people, right? Just when they thought about it, Yun Jian had already pulled back her leg. She reached out and grabbed Lu Mei's hair, lifted Lu Mei up, and then sneered. Chapter 12:13. As Yun Jian spoke, the people present didn't even know when a butterfly knife suddenly appeared in her hand. The butterfly knife suddenly appeared in Yunjian's hand. She gently swung the butterfly knife twice and grabbed Lu Mei's hair with one hand. Yunjian's style of playing with the knife came and went freely. Her movements were so skillful that it seemed that she often played with the butterfly knife. Ordinary people would never be able to play with the butterfly knife so skillfully like Yunjian without 3 or 4 years of practice. Just when Lu Mei recovered from the pain of being stepped on by Yunjian several times, she felt the butterfly knife spinning in front of her. However, in the next second, the blade of the butterfly knife actually stabbed towards his eyes. Ah! Not only Lu Mei screamed and closed her eyes, but the passengers on the long-distance bus around, including the bus driver and the conductor, also screamed. Everyone was frightened by Yunjian's sudden turn of the blade and stabbing toward Lu Mei's eye. They screamed one after another, and some people even covered their eyes. Because of Yunjian's previous ruthless means, when Yunjian held the butterfly knife and stabbed toward Lu Mei's eye, everyone was shocked. No one doubted whether Yunjian really dared to do it. So at this moment, everyone thought there would be a bloody scene. Qin Yiru, who was sitting on the bus, heard the scream. When she just stood up, she was stopped by Gu Junjian. Gu Junjian said to Qin Yiru very gently, "Sit down. I'll go and see." After that, Gu Junjian walked out of the bus. At this moment, the butterfly knife in Yunjian's hand had stopped 0.1 centimeters away from Lu Mei's eye. At this time, Lu Mei seemed to have been scared to death. She closed her eyes fiercely. Because her scalp was pulled by Yunjian, she couldn't move her face, so she closed her eyes and felt that the blade of the butterfly knife was less than 1 centimeter away from her skin. Lu Mei was so scared that she screamed on the spot. She didn't realize that Yunjian had stopped the butterfly knife. "Ah! I was wrong. I shouldn't have pushed your mother, but who asked you to be so beautiful? It's not my fault. Also, you're dressed so old-fashioned, yet Lin's mother is helping you." When Lu Mei begged for mercy, she even said a few words to clarify herself. It was obvious that she was not remorseful at all as she begged for mercy. However, the surrounding people heard it clearly. This Lu Mei was really stupid. Not only did she admit her mistake, but she also said the reason. Now, the people around didn't even have the chance to think that Lu Mei was tortured by Yunjian. "Apologize to my mother." After listening to Lu Mei's words, Yunjian's expression remained unchanged, but she said this indifferently. "I'm sorry. I'm sorry." Lu Mei was so scared that her whole body was trembling. She had already reached out to cover her eyes and was so scared that she burst into tears. Yunjian stood up. She loosened her grip on Lu Mei's hair and turned her hand over. 5 blades immediately appeared in her hand. At this time, Lu Mei opened her eyes and saw that Yunjian suddenly held 5 blades in her hand. She was scared silly. The surrounding people were also a little surprised. However, they heard Yunjian's beautiful, melodious voice again. She said to Lu Mei. While speaking, she turned the 5 blades in her hand. "I'll give you 5 seconds to get out of my sight, or I'll kill you." These words were flat and monotonous, without any emotion, but it was enough to startle the people present. Chapter 12-14. Yunjian's cold words coupled with her horrifying skills just now. Lu Mei's whole body suddenly trembled. She almost rolled and crawled to the bus station. She didn't even have time to say goodbye to Yang Lin and just rushed out of here. Yunjian only sneered. A person like Lu Mei would only add to the unpleasant atmosphere of the trip. Since she had left on her own accord, it was just as she wanted. Yang Lin was also frightened by Yunjian's skills just now. Now watching Lu Mei leave, he didn't even dare to say a word. Yunjian grabbed 5 throwing knives in one hand. She looked sideways at Zhang Jin, who was kicked away by her just now. She raised her lips slightly and said coldly, "Why are you still here?" As she spoke, she twirled the 5 flying daggers in her hand in a relaxed manner. Zhang Jin shuddered in fear when he recalled how Yunjian had sent the 5 flying daggers flying past Lu Mei like she was performing acrobatics in a circus. Although he was in his 20s, it was the first time that he had encountered such a thing. At first, Lu Mei and Zhang Jin just wanted to follow them to have fun. Anyway, Yang Lin would pay the travel expenses and all the expenses for them. But at this moment, seeing Yun Jian's threat, Zhang Jin was so scared that he quickly turned around and ran away. Yun Jian, who was standing in the same place, sneered slightly. Then she turned her head to look at Yang Lin, who was shrinking in the distance. "Why don't you get in the car?" Yang Lin was a little scared by Yun Jian's skills just now. Hearing Yun Jian's voice, he immediately followed her. Lu Mei and Zhang Jin could run so fast. Of course, they couldn't be seriously injured. They must have been scared. As long as they didn't make a big scene, no one would care about what happened just now. After Yun Jian got in the car, she glanced at the crowd and then pursed her lips, saying, "They miss home, so they don't want to go. We'll play by ourselves." Of course, they were referring to Lu Mei and Zhang Jin, who had fled in panic. Upon hearing Yun Jian's words, the corners of Yang Lin's mouth twitched. He was clearly chased away by a scary person like you. Nothing was said along the way. Serene City was not far from Longmen City, as they were both in Zhe Province. After the bus brought Yun Jian and the others to the bus station in Ning City, Yun Jian and the others got off the bus. "Hey! Yun Jian, I'm here." She saw Ningxia waving to Yun Jian from afar. Ningxia's face was full of smiles. She waved her hands and her face was full of hospitality. After meeting Ningxia in Hasa village and going to the tomb, especially when Yun Jian saved Ningxia in Hasa village, Ningxia's gratitude to Yun Jian was indescribable. Not long ago, when Yun Jian decided to bring Xiao Yunzhu and the others to the beach to play, Ningxia called Yun Jian not long after, saying that she wanted Yun Jian to visit her house. Yun Jian agreed at the time. Ningxia knew that Yun Jian and Lin Xiaochu were not on good terms, so she came alone today. When she saw Yun Jian, Ningxia rushed over. Glancing at Qin Yiru and Gu Junjian, she greeted, "Hello, aunties." "Hello, uncles." She then ran over to help Yun Jian with her luggage. Ningxia's family was very rich. Since Yun Jian had saved her last time, Ningxia and her parents asked Yun Jian and Mrs. Yang's family to stay for dinner. The best beach in Serene City is at Zhoudao, but it takes more than 40 minutes to get there by a big ferry. The hotels there charge a lot. So stay at my house tonight. I'll bring you around tonight and have a seafood feast. Tomorrow morning, we'll take the big ferry to Zhoudao for a whole day and come back in the evening. Ningxia came up with the most suitable travel plan. Looking at how excited Ningxia was, Yun Jian nodded with narrowed eyes. Chapter 12-15. It was a very troublesome thing if one did not know the locals when traveling, because one would be cheated. If one were to ask a stranger, they would not tell one much for no reason. Of course, one would meet a friendly stranger as well. However, if one were to meet someone who was scheming against one, such as him leading the way and inviting one to his restaurant for a meal, it would be a common occurrence. Therefore, with the guidance of a local like Ningxia, one could save a lot of trouble. Many people were willing to follow tour groups because they could not find a place to travel. With Ningxia's help, it was much more convenient for Yun Jian's family and Mrs. Yang's family. After lunch, the group was ready to go shopping. Ningxia's parents were government officials. When the two of them heard that Ningxia was traveling to Country A and Yun Jian was traveling here after saving Ningxia, they quickly took a few days off and invited Yun Jian and Mrs. Yang's family for lunch in a friendly manner. Ningxia's mother was a very elegant woman, so after chatting with Qin Yiru and Mrs. Yang for lunch, the three of them came to a tacit understanding and went shopping together in the afternoon. Gu Junjian did not go. He stayed at Ningxia's house to play chess with Ningxia's father. Both of them were experts in chess. During the Chinese New Year, Gu Junjian played a few rounds of chess with Ce. It was no exaggeration to say that it was because Ce was good at chess that Gu Junjian strongly supported Ce to pursue Yun Jian in the beginning. Xiao Yunzhu and the other two were brought out shopping by Qin Yiru, so Yun Jian, Yun Yi, Qin Yu, and Ningxia were at home together. Since we're free in the afternoon, I'll bring you guys to the biggest shopping mall here. Hee hee, I've asked Senior Roy to come along too. He's the one who was more handsome when we were at Hassa village last time. Ningxia stuck her tongue out at Yunjian as she spoke and added, I know you don't get along well with Xiao Chu and Duan Tianyu, so I didn't ask them along today. This prevented Yunjian from encountering anything unpleasant. Yunjian nodded with a smile. Ningxia then brought Yunjian and the rest to Serene City's huge shopping mall. In 1999, Serene City's busiest shopping mall was crowded. Amidst the bustle, Ningxia brought Yunjian and the rest to Huchirue. Huchirue greeted Yunjian, obviously knowing that Yunjian was coming. Beside Huchirue was a man in his 20s. He was dressed very fashionably, but he looked a little sloppy. This is my bro, Su Liao. Huchirue put an arm around Su Liao and introduced him to Yunjian and the rest. Su Liao glanced at Yunjian and Qin Yu with a grin, then greeted, Hello, little girls. With that said, Su Liao even flipped his bangs and pretended to be cool. Yunyi grabbed Qin Yu's hand and introduced her to Huchirue and Su Liao. Hello, I'm Yunyi. This is my girlfriend. Yunyi was reminding Su Liao that they were his people, so stop looking. However, that was not the end. Su Liao had thought that Yunjian was just a delicate little girl, so he brushed his hair to act cool. He wanted to present his coolest side to Yunjian. However, just as Su Liao was about to brag, he heard Huchirue introduce Yunjian to Su Liao from behind. Chapter 12:16. So she's the one who subdued the robber. Huh? What? It's her. Roy, are you sure? She's the one who subdued the robber? Su Liao did not react at first as he followed Yunjian's gaze closely. When he heard what Huchirue said later, Su Liao was almost dumbfounded from shock. Suddenly hearing that Yunjian was the girl whom Huchirue had been talking about a few days ago, Su Liao nearly fainted from the shock. After all, Huchirue had been bragging about Yunjian's abilities a few days ago. The way she killed the robber with a swing of the knife had given Su Liao a fright. Now that he heard that Yunjian was the main character, Su Liao had imagined Yunjian to be weak. It was not hard to imagine how shocked Su Liao was by Yunjian's abilities. Heh, alright. Why don't we go for a walk by the beach? Ningxia suggested suddenly and turned to Yunjian to continue her explanation. The best beach here is at Zhoudao. We'll take the big ship there tomorrow morning. The water on the beach is especially clean. We can swim in the water in our swimsuits. Let's go for a walk by the beach today. There's a beach here too, but it's not that clean. We'll go for a walk today and I'll bring you to a clean beach for a swim tomorrow. Ningxia had initially wanted to bring Yunjian and the rest to Serene City's shopping mall, but she recalled that there was a sea near the shopping mall when they arrived. Hence, she suggested quickly. Everyone agreed with her suggestion without any objections. After all, shopping mall existed in every city. It was not rare. Since Yunjian had come all the way from Longmen City, she wanted to see the sea. Qin Yu's eyes glinted when she heard that they were going for a walk by the beach in Serene City. Qin Yu avoided him discreetly and watched as Ningxia, Huchirue, and the other two walked ahead first. It was only then that she pulled Yunjian closer and whispered in her ear, Sister Jian, I received news earlier that there'll be an international bigwig conducting an arms deal at a certain beach in Serene City today. I wonder if it's the sea we're going to. Qin Yu was always paying attention to international events, so she was usually privy to the details of some secret arms deals. It's fine. Let's go. Yunjian looked relaxed. Just as Yunjian and Qin Yu whispered to each other, Su Liao, who had been walking in front, suddenly turned around to see Yunjian and Qin Yu whispering to each other. Hey, what are you whispering about? Why are you so secretive? Su Liao asked curiously. Nothing. Yunjian replied coldly. Then, they came to the beach. This beach was full of people coming and going, and the crowd was quite crowded. Ningxia stuck her tongue out and turned to look at Yunjian before telling the rest, I know there's a sea nearby that's empty. It's not far away. I'll bring you guys there. This place was too crowded, so everyone listened to Ning Xia's suggestion and followed Ning Xia's lead to another sea. There were not many people here. Looking left and right, they could only see about a dozen people walking around the sea. Just as they neared the beach, before they reached the beach, a few hooligans in their 20s came over and studied Yunjian and Qin Yu for a while. The leading hooligan's eyes were glued to Yunjian when he saw her. These hooligans wanted to flirt with pretty girls whenever they saw them. The leading hooligan went to stand in front of Yunjian. He was shirtless with a tattoo on his chest that he thought looked cool and manly. Chapter 12-17. This group of ruffians had been here many times and flirted with many pretty girls. Therefore, it was not a coincidence that he brought his buddies over to tease Yunjian when he saw Yunjian and the rest today. It was him who was waiting here to tease the pretty girls. Yunyi frowned as he watched this unfamiliar man who exuded a ruffian aura walk over to tease his younger sister. He then shielded Qin Yu behind him and stood in front of the man and Yunjian. Please make way. Let me pass. Yunyi did not want a direct confrontation, so he spoke with a frown. Who are you, kid? The leader of the ruffians extended his fists and smashed them together, creating a cracking sound between the bones. He looked up at Yunyi, pretending that he was good at fighting. After the ruffian put on an act, he glanced at Yunjian who was standing behind Yunyi from the corner of his eyes. He felt that his bones had cracked when he clenched his fists and smashed them together. It was a dashing move. Therefore, the ruffian wanted to see Yunjian's reaction. The ruffian knew that he was quite good-looking. He assumed that ordinary women would think that he was powerful and influential after seeing his looks and the tattoo on his bare chest. Then, they would try to seduce him. As long as it was a woman, they would be willing to talk to him. However, when the ruffian caught a glimpse of Yunjian who was not far away, he saw that she was not moved at all. She was not attracted by his cool act just now. The hooligan's self-esteem was greatly damaged. Just as he was about to do something to show off his abilities, Yi Ci suddenly stopped him. Capture them all and seal off this area. Suddenly, a man's voice in a foreign language rang eerily. Yunjian narrowed her eyes abruptly. The man spoke in German. Just as Yunjian narrowed his eyes, he saw a group of people dressed like they were from the underground black market running in from not far away. They came in and surrounded the place in no time. At the same time, a dozen of them rushed over in an attempt to restrain Yunjian and the rest. Qin Yu's eyes glinted. She did not expect to run into what she had mentioned in the beginning. Sister Jian, looks like this is where they're trading their firearms. Qin Yu went close to Yunjian and told her softly. Yunjian had thought that she would not run into something like this since there were so many places by the sea in Serene City. Who knew that she would actually run into it? Soon, a dozen people came over to tie up Yunjian and the rest. Yunjian did not struggle. There were people who were tied up and tried to scream, but the people from both sides of the firearms trade covered their mouths with black tape immediately. The thugs, who had been acting cool in front of Yunjian just now, were now dumbfounded by what they saw. They had never seen such a terrifying scene before. They were men from the underground black market. They were all real gangsters. Yunjian did not struggle because these people would release all the innocent people around them once the firearms trade was done. They were not letting them go now because they were afraid that these people would spread rumors. Once the trade was done, it would be too late even if someone who wanted to disrupt the firearms trade got the news. As expected, a group of people came out from the streets of Serene City not long after. On the other hand, the other party disembarked from a large cruise ship that only appeared after a while. Both parties officially started the firearms trade. When both parties met and saw a young-looking man in his 20s coming down from the cruise ship, Yunjian's eyes narrowed. What a coincidence. It was him. Chapter 12-18. He was her greatest enemy, but he could also be considered an old friend. Why did she say that? The reason was simple. Yunjian was an agent trained by Lin Wei in Anhan in her previous life. At that time, Yun Jian was abducted into the organization when she was 5 years old and was forced to undergo a test of life and death. At that time, there were at least a few hundred people who entered in Han with Yun Jian to undergo the assassin test. After that, there would be a new batch of people joining the organization every once in a while. Of course, every once in a while, a group of weaker children would die, and their corpses would be dragged out and fed to the wild dogs. As a secret agent, the cruelty of life that Yun Jian had gone through was not something that outsiders could understand. When she entered the organization, she fought with hundreds of children, including Yun Jian. It was an environment where the strong were respected and the weak were killed. Back and forth, among at least a few thousand children, there were only 3 who could grow up and walk out of the organization alive, including Yun Jian. And Yun Jian was the strongest among them. These 3 people were all influential figures on the international assassin and agent rankings. They had stepped over countless corpses since they were young and desperately survived. It could be said that in the organization, even if someone suddenly stabbed you to death while you were sleeping, you could only accept your fate. Survival of the fittest. To be able to kill thousands of people and survive until the end, the 3 people were undoubtedly the strongest existences. Yes, among the few thousand people, one of them was Yun Jian, and the young man who looked to be in his 20s standing not far away was also one of them. Only 3 people survived from thousands of people back then. Other than Yun Jian, the young man in front of her who looked to be in his 20s was also one of the strongest in the world. He was the 3rd on the international secret agent rankings, the god of war, codenamed Mad Dragon. Mad Dragon was also an elite among the strong. His strength was one of the best even on the international secret agent rankings. Therefore, Mad Dragon was Yun Jian's greatest enemy in her previous life, as well as her old friend. In the organization, Mad Dragon was her enemy. Because in such a large assassin organization, the thousands of children were Yun Jian's enemies. Either they die, or she dies. But after leaving the organization, Yun Jian's international development did not have any conflict of interest with Mad Dragon. Even when Yun Jian had just started out, Mad Dragon had even helped her. He saw that Mad Dragon was in the middle of an arms deal with another group of people. Originally, the innocent people present would have been fine. Yun Jian didn't want to acknowledge Mad Dragon either. But unexpectedly, the hooligan who had just tried to flirt with Yun Jian didn't have his mouth covered by the black tape. He didn't shout just now because he didn't react. Now that he reacted, he began to loudly beg for mercy. "You, who are you? We're just passing by, just passing by. Let us go. I beg of you." The hooligan was terrified at once, and his voice was very loud. As soon as his voice was loud, it immediately attracted the attention of the 2 groups of people who were waiting for the arms deal to be completed. Mad Dragon furrowed his brows. Was he trying to attract the attention of outsiders and let them know that there was an arms deal going on here? Kill that group of people. Under Mad Dragon's order, the hooligan's shout almost killed everyone, including Yun Jian. "Ah! Don't kill us. Don't kill us." Not only did the hooligan not realize that he was the one who caused this disaster, he began to wail like a ghost and howl like a wolf. If the hooligan didn't shout, Yun Jian and the others wouldn't have been noticed at all. When the arms deal was over, Yun Jian and the others could be released. However, the hooligan's shout directly attracted Mad Dragon's attention. Mad Dragon was the same as Yun Jian. They were both kings who climbed out of piles of corpses. He was used to seeing dead people and killing people. There was no difference between killing a few more and killing a few less. After receiving Mad Dragon's order, the men immediately took out silenced pistols from their pockets. Just as they were about to shoot the hooligan and Yun Jian who was next to the hooligan. Chapter 12-19. Back when she was in an Hun group, she was the most capable one among the hundreds of people. Her strength was reflected in her ruthlessness, her speed, and her insanity. Why was it said that Hun only had a few hundred people while Yun Jian and the rest had killed thousands of people and survived? The reason was simple. Hun would have a new batch of recruits every year. At the same time, there would be a group of weak people being killed by strong people in Anhun every day. If the newcomers were too weak, they would be killed by the strong people in no time. Only a few hundred people would survive every year. This batch of recruits would die the next year, which led to one thing. There were only a few hundred people who could survive in the organization. Coming back to reality, Yun Jian's cold voice not only scared the gangsters group half to death, but it also scared Mad Dragon's subordinates and the group of people who were about to make an arms deal with Mad Dragon. Was there anyone in this world who dared to call Mad Dragon that? After all, who was Mad Dragon? He was ranked 3rd on the International Secret Agent ranking. Anyone who could be ranked in the top 3 on the International Secret Agent or Assassin ranking was definitely a fearsome presence in the world. Even the top 10 Secret Agent or Assassin ranking, those who could not be ranked in the top 3 would turn tail and run if they did not have the ability to win against the top 3. Even if Mad Dragon was only ranked in the top 10 of the International Secret Agent or Assassin ranking, everyone here would be scared out of their wits. Not to mention, he was Mad Dragon who was ranked in the top 3 on the Secret Agent ranking. What kind of international status was that? Moreover, Mad Dragon was one of the 3 people who had walked out of Anhun alive with Slaying God, the top secret agent on the International Secret Agent ranking. He knew Slaying God, the top secret agent on the International Secret Agent ranking. Therefore, everyone present was shocked by Yun Jian's behavior. A young girl like her dared to challenge Mad Dragon who was ranked 3rd on the International Secret Agent ranking? She even called Mad Dragon, "You brat." This young girl probably had not even met Mad Dragon before, yet she dared to be so arrogant. Could it be that she only wanted to avoid being killed? The surrounding people were so scared that their faces turned pale. It had been a few years since he had heard such a form of address. Mad Dragon narrowed his eyes and turned to look at Yun Jian. He saw a fair and clean face that was so exquisite and beautiful that it was hard to believe that there was such a beautiful face in this world. Even Mad Dragon, who was used to seeing world-class beauties, couldn't help but take a second look. On the other hand, the leader of the other group of people dealing with Mad Dragon glared fiercely at Yun Jian. This person was also stunned by Yun Jian's appearance, but he quickly recovered. Then the man glared fiercely at Yun Jian, then turned to Mad Dragon and said with a smile, "Don't be angry, I'll order someone to kill her now." As he spoke, the man waved his hand and was about to order his men to give Yun Jian a fatal blow. Yun Jian suddenly untied herself from the ropes and stood up with a stretch. Although her movements were extremely sluggish, no one noticed the strange light that flashed across the corner of Yun Jian's eyes. Her. How could she untie the ropes? She was tied up tightly just now. Yun Jian's subordinate who stood beside her gasped. Mad Dragon suddenly noticed Qin Yu's face. This girl, why did she look so familiar? This girl, wasn't she one of SS people? Coupled with Yun Jian's arrogant tone just now, it overlapped with a certain arrogant but powerful person in his memory. Could it be? Mad Dragon suddenly thought of this and pointed a finger at Yun Jian. His arrogant and cold demeanor was replaced by a frightened expression. Then, he looked at Yun Jian and said fearfully in front of everyone. Chapter 12:20. Everyone was shocked by what Mad Dragon said. SS. None of them were surprised to be addressed as SS. Slaying God, who ranked 1st on the secret agent leaderboard, was not addressed as SS to outsiders. The term SS was a nickname given to Yun Jian's codename, Slaying God, by those who were close to her. Only those who were close to Yun Jian in her past life would address her as SS in such an intimate manner. That was why everyone present was surprised, but not by that. Instead, Mad Dragon, ranked 3rd on the International Secret Agent leaderboard, the Mad Dragon who was once from the same organization as Slaying God, the most legendary secret agent in the secret agent world. Everyone present should pay their respects to him. If Mad Dragon were to stomp his foot, everyone present would be in shock. The Mad Dragon who struck fear in their hearts. How could he call out the 2 letters SS to Yun Jian? Although no one present knew the meaning of the 2 letters SS, they could tell from Mad Dragon's expression. The teenage girl in front of them was definitely not a simple person. SS. What's SS? The hooligan who almost peed his pants earlier shouted out loud when he saw how Mad Dragon addressed Yun Jian. It was as if he had discovered something that allowed him to survive. After shouting, the hooligan assumed that Yun Jian had something going on with Mad Dragon because he did not know Mad Dragon's identity. Hence, the hooligan struggled to free himself from the ropes and bounced towards Mad Dragon twice. Since he was tied up, he could not break free. Instead, he took a step closer to Mad Dragon. Therefore, the hooligan revealed a very friendly smile. He smirked at Mad Dragon twice with a hint of mockery, then said, "This. Big brother, are you interested in her? How about this? We're all innocent. Let us go and take her away. We promise not to call the police." Initially, the hooligan was the one who wanted to flirt with Yun Jian. So when he saw that Yun Jian and Mad Dragon seemed to know each other, he looked at Mad Dragon with an "I know you very well" expression. He thought that as a man, he understood Mad Dragon's feelings for Yun Jian very well. After all, no one present believed that Yun Jian's international status was higher than Mad Dragon's. How old was she? And Mad Dragon's reaction to Yun Jian just now was naturally thought by the hooligan that he had feelings for Yun Jian. After the gangster finished speaking, he looked at Mad Dragon with extremely flattering eyes, as if waiting for Mad Dragon to praise him and let him go. When the leader of the other group of people who were in the arms deal with Mad Dragon heard the words of the hooligan, he immediately thought that Mad Dragon was interested in Yun Jian. "You. So you're interested in this beauty, then why don't you?" The leader of the other group of people who were in the arms deal with Mad Dragon thought that Mad Dragon was interested in Yun Jian and immediately said. But before he could finish speaking, Mad Dragon, who was standing next to the leader, slapped the leader to the ground. Before anyone could react, Mad Dragon pulled out a silver pistol from his waist. He was so fast that the hooligan had no time to react. He pointed the gun at the hooligan and then fired a shot at the hooligan's thigh. The gun was a silenced pistol. If one listened carefully, they could hear a soft, cheat sound. In the next second, the hooligan who was tied up screamed with all his might. But because he was tied up, he couldn't turn around, and it didn't take long for him to be drenched in sweat. Just as the hooligan was about to faint, he heard Mad Dragon smashing the silver pistol on the ground. His face was very ugly as he said loudly, "I'm interested in her? How dare you say that? Do you know who she is? Even if I had 100 times the courage, I wouldn't dare to be interested in SS. If you dare say that again, I'll kill you all." Quang Long's words caused everyone present to feel a sense of shock and excitement. Is she more powerful than Mad Dragon? Chapter 12:21. The boss and his underlings who were in the arms deal with Mad Dragon were stunned by Mad Dragon's words. Especially Ningxia, Hu Chirue, and Su Liao. If Yun Jian's skill in killing the robbers back in Hasa village was eerie and frightening, then Mad Dragon's current level of power was terrifying. Now, Yun Jian's influence was enough to make Ningxia and the rest pale with fright. It was apparent that Mad Dragon was a powerful figure. Judging from the way Mad Dragon was fearful of Yun Jian and the reactions of the people around them, Yun Jian's identity was not as simple as it seemed. Unknowingly, Qingyu had already untied the rope that bound her. Yun Yi had been learning from Yun Jian for a long time, so she had mastered the ability to untie ropes a long time ago. The crowd did not even know when Qingyu and Yun Yi had undone the ropes. Someone who was standing not far away suddenly pointed at Yun Jian. He seemed to have thought of something and shouted, "SS. I got it." If the Chinese pronunciation of SS is translated, isn't she the #1 secret agent, slaying God? The person's tone became more agitated as he spoke. He looked at Yun Jian and spoke loudly as if he was afraid that the others would not know. His tone was laced with fear. "Could you be slaying God?" The last sentence was uttered with fear. Moreover, this person's tone was filled with surprise and disbelief. It was not surprising. If Yun Jian was really the #1 secret agent, slaying God, how was this possible? This girl who appeared out of nowhere was the #1 secret agent, slaying God? How was that possible? Slaying God came and went without a trace. Her whereabouts were so eerie that it was frightening. Moreover, every time Slaying God appeared, she would wear a mask made of human skin. Therefore, the number of people in the world who had seen Slaying God's true face could be counted on one hand. As soon as that person finished speaking, everyone present was dumbfounded. What? Special agent ranking? Ningxia and the others didn't even know what the special agent ranking was. However, no matter how stupid the people from Ningxia were, it was impossible for them to not understand the meaning of this ranking. Secret agents and assassins were characters from movies. However, why were these people questioning if Yun Jian was the top secret agent, Slaying God? First place. Then he would be number one in the world? Su Liao had never thought that Yun Jian, whom he had taken an interest in from the first time he saw her, was just a gentle and weak little girl. Was she Slaying God, the top secret agent on the international secret agent ranking? However, just when the scene was in an uproar and the scene was filled with horror and astonishment, Yun Jian was not affected by the horrifying scene at all. Her voice was cold as she said, "I'm not." She was not Slaying God because that was her past life. Yun Jian did not even need a draft when she lied. Mad Dragon, who was standing not far away, had obviously noticed that Yun Jian did not want to reveal her identity. Cough cough. Slaying God, the top secret agent ranking, how could she be her? Mad Dragon helped Yun Jian to lie. Then why are you so agitated when you see her? Someone risked his life to ask Mad Dragon. At that moment, everyone had their eyes on Mad Dragon. However, before Mad Dragon could say anything, Yun Jian's cold voice was heard again. Because he was too weak. I once chased him around and beat him up. Did she just say that Mad Dragon, the third best secret agent on the international secret agent ranking, was too weak? Once again, everyone was stunned by Yun Jian's words. Right then, 4 tall silhouettes walked in from the periphery of the beach. Chapter 12:22. No one noticed that the people who surrounded the beach had fallen and Ce was making his way over smoothly. Those who stood where they were unwilling to believe Yun Jian's words. Since she claimed that she was not Slaying God, how could she have captured and beaten up Mad Dragon, who was ranked 3rd in the international secret agent ranking? Just as everyone was doubtful and refused to believe the truth, Mad Dragon, who stood opposite Yun Jian, suddenly coughed softly. Cough. SS, can you not expose me when you're here? Although this is the truth. After saying that, Kuang Long's cold and aloof face was replaced by a faint smile. Those who thought that Yun Jian was exaggerating were stunned by Mad Dragon's admission. This. Could it be true? Who was Mad Dragon? He was ranked 3rd in the secret agent ranking and a top powerhouse in the secret agent industry. In the end, he admitted it himself that he could not defeat Yun Jian. Even when Yun Jian denied her shocking identity of being Slaying God, Mad Dragon's admission was enough to shock everyone present. While everyone was frozen in shock, Ce appeared out of nowhere and grabbed Yun Jian's hand as he glanced at Mad Dragon with a sense of danger. It was only then that Ce looked at Yun Jian. His aloof gaze that swept across the place turned into a gentle morning sun. Ce looked at Yun Jian and turned his slightly curved side profile to the people present. Irresistible gentleness was reflected in the soft light as he looked at her and asked softly, "Xiao Jian, is it fun?" His soft greeting surprised everyone present. There was an unusually sharp gleam in his eyes. The man who appeared out of nowhere could still look at Yun Jian with such a doting gleam when he saw her. Yun Jian did not resist Ce's handshake. Instead, she openly interlaced her fingers with his. Where are the people guarding the perimeter? Didn't they seal off the sea? How can anyone come in? Where are they? The boss, who was about to trade arms with Mad Dragon, suddenly grabbed one of his men's collar and bellowed. The surrounding sea was guarded. Logically, Ce should not be able to come in. Kill him. Ce suddenly turned to the side. His flawless face was so perfect that even men could not help staring at it for a few seconds. Ce uttered the word nonchalantly as he grabbed Yunjian's hand with one hand while the other was casually and lazily tucked in his pants pocket. There were 3 people standing behind Ce, Mo Sen, Shuang, and Lin Wei. At this moment, Shuang was resting one hand on the shoulder of Mo Sen and Lin Wei respectively. He was hugging the shoulders of these 2 people with his back facing them. It seemed that he was whispering something. What? You actually dared to kill my men. You. The boss was clearly a bit stupid. When he heard that Ce had killed his men, he was so angry that he wanted to order people to arrest Ce. However, at this moment, Shuang finished whispering to Mo Sen and Lin Wei. Shuang and the other 2 also turned around. At this moment, Mad Dragon saw Lin Wei. Previously, Shuang had his back facing them, so Mad Dragon did not see Lin Wei clearly. Now that he suddenly saw Lin Wei, Mad Dragon was stunned for a second before shouting in surprise, "L, it's you?" L was Lin Wei's unique code name when he was training assassins in the Enhan organization. It only had one letter. Lin Wei's name was not particularly famous, but he was still well known. However, who in the underworld did not know about the Enhan organization's L? Chapter 12:23. If Mad Dragon, who was ranked 3rd on the secret agent ranking, was a terrifying existence, then any one of the 4 leaders of Enhan could be compared to the top 3 on the secret agent ranking. In other words, Lin Wei's strength was enough to receive the same treatment as Mad Dragon on the international level, or even higher. It was obvious that Yunjian was trained by Lin Wei, so Mad Dragon was naturally trained by Lin Wei as well. Mad Dragon was a little surprised to see Lin Wei here, but he didn't say anything after he recovered. Lin Wei only nodded slightly at Mad Dragon, but didn't say anything. In comparison, among the 4 leaders of Enhan, only Lin Wei was more aloof. He was the one who didn't talk much, and if he didn't have to, he wouldn't say a word. According to the ranking of aloof, the second would be Mo Sen, who was very steady in his work. "Hey, brat, I've finally met a student of yours." Shuang put his arm around Lin Wei's shoulder, leaned in front of Lin Wei, and joked with him. "Let go." Lin Wei spat out a word with a cold face. Shuang was so scared that he quickly removed his arm from Lin Wei's shoulder. Among the 4 great chieftains, the one with the strongest strength was Lin Wei, and the one with the most handsome appearance was Shuang. However, there was a long scar on Shuang's neck. This scar covered up some of his handsomeness. Therefore, women would usually stay far away from him in fear when they saw him. How could they still care about whether he was handsome or not? When Ningxia's group saw Ce and the other 3, they became even more suspicious. Why did these people seem to have a big background? Tomorrow at Zhoudao, I have something to tell you. Just as the atmosphere was about to fall into a low tide, Yunjian suddenly said to Mad Dragon. Mad Dragon's looks were not bad. When Yunjian said this, Ce grabbed Yunjian's hand even tighter. Mad Dragon didn't even think before agreeing, no problem. Mad Dragon believed that if he didn't agree to this lady's invitation, his lair would be blown up by this lady. "Let's go," Yunjian said as she turned around. At the same time, her little hand was still held by Ce. Qin Yu and Yun Yi had already untied the people from Ningxia. This arms deal would continue. Of course, if Yunjian and the others wanted to leave, how could the boss of the arms deal with Mad Dragon dare to stop them? They watched as Yunjian and the others walked out. Ce held Yunjian's hand and disappeared in front of everyone. Lin Wei and the others also followed behind. Yin Yi, Qin Yu, and Ningxia went out as well. Only the gangsters group was ignored. Mad Dragon only breathed a sigh of relief when he saw Yunjian and the others leave. "Are we letting them go just like that?" the boss suddenly said. After saying that, he immediately realized his mistake and hurriedly covered his mouth. However, Mad Dragon still heard the boss's words clearly. Mad Dragon looked at the boss like he was looking at an idiot, then sneered at him. "Idiot, can't you see?" The 3 men standing beside that man were all the 4 leaders of Enhan. Other than Adam, all of them are here. 3 of the 4 leaders are here. The 3 of them are protecting that man. What do you mean? You idiot, think about it carefully. The boss reacted just as Mad Dragon finished speaking. When their thoughts came back to them, the rest of the group held their breaths. Boss exclaimed in shock, "Mo, could that man be?" Chapter 12:24. Shut your mouth. That person's business isn't something you can discuss. Otherwise, you won't even know how you died. Mad Dragon reprimanded his boss with a frown when he saw how curious he was. No one noticed that Mad Dragon's heart clenched when he said that. His expression was solemn. In fact, even Berserk Dragon was terrified at this moment. That person was definitely the scariest person in the world. No one could compare to him. If he or boss dared to leak a word about him today, they would not live past tomorrow. Seeing Mad Dragon's solemn expression, boss was shocked and immediately covered his mouth. On the other side, Ce held Yunjian's hand as she walked in front. Lin Wei and the other 2 followed behind her. Yun-Yi and Qin Yu walked side by side as well. Behind them were Ning Xia and the other 2 who were still in shock. It was not until they walked out that Su Liao looked at Yunjian, who was walking in front. His gaze fell on Ci's hand that was holding Yunjian's. Su Liao was silent for 2 seconds before he asked Yunjian, who were those people just now? How can they open fire so brazenly? Su Liao, Ning Xia, and Hu Chirue were together. They were all university students and had never seen such a scene before. They were obviously scared out of their wits. Ningxia and Hu Chirue had already seen it in Hasa village, but when they saw the frightening scene again, they were still frightened from the bottom of their hearts. Yunjian was taking 2 steps forward when she suddenly stopped and turned around slightly. Her hand was still held by Ce. She smirked and said, "You want to know? You can go back and find out." After that, Yunjian ignored Su Liao, who was trembling in fear, and continued walking forward while holding Ce's hand. When they came to a fork in the road, Yun-Yi greeted Yunjian before taking Qin Yu to shop. Yunjian nodded at once and Yun-Yi pulled Qin Yu away. "Hey, young mistress, was that your sister-in-law?" Shuang put his arm around Mo Sen's shoulder and asked Yunjian. Obviously, the sister-in-law was Qin Yu. Qin Yu's international reputation was not weak, so it was not surprising that Shuang knew her. Yes, Yunjian replied. They then went to the shopping mall nearby. They had planned to shop here, but Ning Xia was eager to bring Yunjian and the rest to the beach, which led to the incident earlier. Ning City was huge, but this was the biggest shopping mall near Ning Xia's home. They had not even made 1 round when they bumped into Qin Yiru, Mrs. Yang, and Ning Xia's mother, who were also shopping. Qin Yiru was holding Duan Li and Duanya's hands. Yun Zhu, on the other hand, walked on his own. In the words of his classmate, Xiao Hui, he was a man and a man should walk on his own. Once he saw Yunjian, Yun Zhu's manly demeanor just now vanished without a trace. Sis. Ce Gidge. Xiao Yunzhu ran toward Yunjian. Yunjian let go of Ci's hand when she saw Xiao Yunzhu and squatted down to extend her hand. She thought that Xiao Yunzhu would throw himself into her arms. Unexpectedly, Xiao Yunzhu bypassed her and hugged Ci's leg tightly. Gidge. Hug. Yunjian, who was prepared to receive Xiao Yunzhu's hug, pursed her lips and stood up discreetly. Ce, who was standing beside Yunjian, saw that Yunjian was defeated. His perfect, handsome face curved slightly and his eyes were filled with adoration. Then, he bent down in the next second and carried Xiao Yunzhu in a suave manner. Ning Xia's mother, who was standing afar, stared at Ce and Yunjian, who were carrying Xiao Yunzhu. She could not help saying to Qin Yiru. Chapter 12:25. Both Ningxia's mother and Ningxia's father came from the countryside. They studied well when they were young and became government officials when they grew up, earning their current standard of living. Therefore, even if their standard of living was not on the same level as before, Ningxia's mother's mindset was still more of a rural person's. Rural people usually got married in their teens. Even if they did not get a marriage certificate, they would hold a banquet in the village to get married first and make up for it when they could get a marriage certificate. Most of them were 16 or 17 years old, while some rural girls were already mothers of 1-year-old children. Therefore, when Ningxia's mother saw how compatible Yunjian and Ce were, she could not help blurting out those words. Yunjian's cheeks flushed right after Ningxia's mother said that. In spite of it, Ce looked like he was afraid that others did not know about his relationship with Yunjian. With a slight smirk, he said naturally in the next second, "I'll do my best." Even if Ningxia's mother's words were unintentional, everyone present thought that something had happened between Ce and Yunjian. Shuang could not help coughing softly before he turned around again, holding back his laughter. He was not mistaken this time. His young master had actually said something so shameless just now. Was he still their young master? Lin Wei and Immerse tugged at each other as well. Qin Yiru was looking forward to it as well, so she felt refreshed when she heard it. Qin Yiru, on the other hand, looked around but did not see Yun Yi. Otherwise, she felt the need to remind her son to have a good grandson or granddaughter as soon as possible. Yunjian's cheeks flushed as she stood beside Ce and pinched Ce's waist softly. Nonsense. Ce did not feel the pain at all, his already slightly curled lips growing more obvious. His Xiao Jian could only belong to him. As for the marriage contract rings on Yunjian and Ce's hands, everyone present had already noticed them. When Qin Yiru asked about it, Yunjian said that Ce had bought it for her. When Qin Yiru heard this, she covered her mouth and laughed. Then, she praised Ce, "This child is getting more and more thoughtful." After shopping in the afternoon, they quickly went back to Ningxia's house. At the same time, Ningxia also said goodbye to Hu Qirui and Su Liao. After dinner, Shuang asked if there were any nightclubs in Ning City. The fact that Shuang and Lin Wei could be here today was because they were on vacation. To Shuang and Lin Wei, Country Z was a tourist destination. Shuang thought that since he could finally relax, he should go to the nightclub for a stroll. Ningxia thought about it for 2 seconds before clapping her hands and shouting, "Yes, there's the Royal nightclub nearby. It's booming business every night." Shuang quickly ran to Yunjian and asked, "Young madam, it's not easy for us to travel. Why don't we go to the nightclub nearby to have some fun tonight?" Shuang was usually very serious when negotiating with international bigwigs, but he was quite playful in private. The reason why Shuang did not talk to Ce but went to Yunjian instead was because he knew that as long as he called Yunjian over, their young master would definitely follow them over. If Ce knew that Shuang referred to him as "young madam" in his heart, Ce would probably send Shuang to the Amazon forest to have fun tonight. Chapter 12:26. When he heard that Yunjian was going, Shuang knew that his young master would definitely go with them. He laughed heartily and looked very refreshed. Yunjian narrowed her eyes slightly. There were big and small nightclubs. Yunjian had been to a few nightclubs since her rebirth, but they were all small. The Royal nightclub that Ningxia was talking about was a chain nightclub in Country Z. It was quite famous in Country Z. Yunjian had overheard some male classmates talking about it when she was in school. However, Yunjian had never been interested in it. Since Shuang was taking the lead today, Yunjian wanted to join in the fun. When Qin Yiru heard that the children were going to a nightclub, she couldn't help but remind them, that kind of place is not safe. You can go and have fun, but you can't drink drinks given by strangers. Some time ago, there was even news about a nightclub being investigated by the police. The young ladies in the club were all engaged in prostitution. In the end, they didn't know about it until the police investigated. It turned out that these young ladies went to the nightclub to play at night and were drugged, locked up, and forced to do this kind of thing. You have to be careful when you go to such places. Don't get cheated. Qin Yiru was completely worried that Yunjian and the rest would go to a nightclub, which sounded like a shady place. As a mother, it was normal for Qin Yiru to be worried. No matter how powerful her daughter Yunjian was, she would still be worried. This was the psychology of being a parent. Yes, Mom, I know, Yunjian said with a smile. She said this so that Qin Yiru wouldn't be worried. Brother Ce. Chestnut, Xiaoya, and I want to go too. Xiao Yunju shook his head. He didn't know what a nightclub was, but when he heard that Yunjian and his brother Ce wanted to go, he wanted to go too. Children can't go to that kind of place. There are police uncles there. If you go with them, you will soon be arrested and locked in prison. Qin Yiru deliberately tricked Xiao Yunju and then carried Xiao Yunju back from Ce. Mrs. Qin, will there be police officers coming to arrest us? Duanli was really frightened. She gulped and asked. Before she could get a reply from Qin Yiru, Duanli had already run over to grab Xiao Yunju, who had been put down by Qin Yiru. She then said to Xiao Yunju, "Let's not go, I'm afraid." Good. If Chestnut says I'm not going, then I'm not going. Xiao Yunju said righteously as he patted his chest. All right, you can go now. Come back early and remember to keep in touch with your phone at all times. Qin Yiru was still worried about Yunjian, so she added. However, Qin Yiru had never been a mother who liked to interfere with her children's affairs. She had always stood behind Yunjian and Yunyi silently, and as long as she didn't interfere with her daughter and son's affairs, she would quietly care about their every word and action. Mom. Yunjian nodded. Then the group set off for Royal Nightclub. Yunyi and Qin Yu didn't go. Only Yunjian, Ce, Shuang, and Ningxia were going. Ningxia was going to lead the way for them, but Ningxia had never been to a nightclub before. At the same time, at the entrance of Royal Nightclub, Yunjian and the others entered one after the other. As soon as they entered, they were attracted by the noise under the dance floor. On the dance floor, a woman with a hot body was doing something that made one's imagination run wild. A bunch of men were shouting and yelling crazily. "Let's book a room, it's too noisy here," Shuang suggested lazily. At the same time, he didn't have any feelings for the woman dancing crazily on the dance floor. Chapter 12:27. At this moment, at the side of the dance floor, a plump old woman with a wrinkled face and an ugly complexion was sitting in front of a patterned low table. Opposite the old woman sat a cowering middle-aged man, who seemed to be discussing something. But it was obvious that the old woman's identity was higher than this cowering middle-aged man. Because on the dance floor, that hot beauty was crazily twisting her body, presenting her exposed body in front of the group of men below the dance floor. Therefore, it attracted the screams of the men below. The noisy sounds in the pool and the screams and shouts of the men made the old woman hiding in the corner and the cowering middle-aged man talk loudly about the indescribable topic without fear. The middle-aged man cowered and looked at the old woman. He was about to take the initiative to break the silence and said, "Aunt Hong, you," the old woman called Aunt Hong, who was in her 40s or 50s, didn't wait for the middle-aged man to finish speaking, and slapped the table and stood up. After Aunt Hong stood up, she pointed at the beautiful woman who was twisting her body on the dance floor to attract the attention of the men, and sneered at the middle-aged man. "Only this kind of goods. How long ago is this kind of goods? It's time to change it. No wonder our shop's business has been snatched away by the newly opened heaven on earth." Aunt Hong looked very angry. The middle-aged man opposite her was startled, and then he suddenly lowered his voice and said to Aunt Hong, "Recently our shop has a few young ladies, and they are still virgins. Aunt Hong, do you want to send them to the bosses? Only this kind of goods. Can't you find a different kind of goods?" Aunt Hong said, "Goods." Listening to her tone, she didn't treat people as people at all. But just when Aunt Hong said this, she was suddenly attracted by a slender figure who had just entered the door. The figure who had just entered the door may not be as enchanting and charming as the beautiful woman who was twisting on the dance floor, but at a glance, it could attract people. Even Aunt Hong, who was a woman, was thoroughly attracted by it at first glance. For a time, Auntie Hong didn't even have the thought to curse the middle-aged man. Her entire being seemed as if her soul had been taken away as she walked towards that delicate and pretty figure with an unbelievably exquisite face. Yun Jian, Ce, and Shuang were standing at the entrance. Yun Jian agreed with Shui Ying's suggestion to book a private room. Shuang actually had other motives for coming here today. He had invited an international big shot who had just arrived in Serene City to come here, intending to cooperate on some matters. Shuang was the leader of the Enhan organization and the other partners. Now that he finally had a vacation, it was only natural that he would be able to travel. However, during the holidays, he still had to deal with the things that needed to be done. Shuang planned to open a private room first and settle the young madam and Ningxia inside. Then, he would ask the young master, Lin Wei, and Immerse to accompany him to talk to that international big shot. That was what Shuang thought. That was why he called Yun Jian over so that his young master would be willing to come along. Just as Shuang finished his words and got Yun Jian's tacit approval, Shui Ying's face changed. At this moment, a very short woman, who was about 40 to 50 years old, wearing a red cheongsam, stood in front of everyone. Once Auntie Hong stood there, she glanced at Yun Jian conspiratorially before coming over with a grin and spoke in a friendly tone. Chapter 12:28. As Auntie Hong spoke, she added with a grin, as if afraid that Yun Jian would misunderstand her as having ulterior motives. At the same time, she wiggled her lipstick that was as red as a chicken's butt and continued. It's like this. I'm the person in charge of the Royal Nightclub. You can call me Aunt Hong. I think it's your first time here to play, right? I think you are all young people. The front hall is noisy and not suitable for you. Do you want to get a private room? I'll take you there. Aunt Hong said, revealing a smile that she thought was very kind. But in her heart, she was thinking, follow me to the private room. It's easier to do things in the private room. Yun Jian narrowed her eyes. Aunt Hong's uninvited appearance made her suspicious. But from Yun Jian's appearance, she didn't have any doubts about Aunt Hong. This made Aunt Hong think that the little fish had taken the bait. Thank you, Aunt Hong. This is my first time here. Let's go to the private room with Aunt Hong. Ningxia was a silly child. She had never been to such an occasion before. She thought that Aunt Hong really came to help out of kindness. Okay, I'll let the waiter at the front desk lead the way for you. In order to not let Yun Jian and the others be suspicious, Aunt Hong didn't personally lead the way for Yun Jian and the others. After saying this, Aunt Hong signaled the waiter at the front desk. When Aunt Hong signaled the waiter to lead the way, her back was facing Yun Jian and the others. So when Aunt Hong winked at the waiter, Yun Jian and the others, who were standing behind Aunt Hong, didn't see it. Soon, the waiter led Yun Jian and the others to the private room. Seeing Yun Jian and the others disappear in front of her and turn the corner to the back of the dance floor, Aunt Hong's kind and smiling face instantly drooped. Aunt Hong. The middle-aged man who was talking to Aunt Hong just now came over and looked at Aunt Hong and shouted. I've already sent someone to bring her over. Send a few more people over. This little girl is definitely the best. After a few years of training, she will definitely become our royal family's #1 miss. Matchmaker revealed a strange smile. Yes. The middle-aged man responded. Then, he paused for a moment before asking Aunt Hong about the doubts in his heart. Auntie Hong, that woman and that man were holding hands when they went in. It's obvious that they are a couple. Could it be that this woman is no longer a virgin? Isn't this girl worthless if she isn't a virgin? With her looks, even if she isn't a virgin, she can still be sold for a good price. Hurry up and prepare for me. This time, I'm going to do something big. Aunt Hong kicked the middle-aged man and then whispered. The middle-aged man immediately replied, yes, yes, yes. Then, he ran away. After Yun Jian and the others entered the private room, Shuang begged Ce to follow him to meet the international big shot. Mo Sen and Lin Wei stood to the side and watched, their mouths twitching from time to time. At first, Ce refused to go. Shuang begged for more than 10 minutes, but to no avail. Then, Yunjian said, "Go and take a look. I'll wait for you here." Yunjian's words made Ce's ears tingle, making Ce feel inexplicably refreshed. "Okay." Then, Ce immediately agreed. She put one hand in her pocket and stood up to walk out. At this moment, Shui Ying's mood was very complicated. He had been with the young master for so long, but a single word from the young mistress was more effective. Who did he offend this time? If he had anything in the future, he would ask the young mistress for help. Thinking of this, Shuang stood up from his seat and followed Ce. Then, he ran out with Lin Wei and Mo Senator just as Ce and the others left. A waiter came in and brought in a pot of free tea. When the waiter left, he didn't close the door tightly and left a small gap. Yunjian could clearly feel that someone was sizing her and Ningxia up with narrowed eyes outside the crack. Chapter 12:29. As soon as she finished drinking, Ningxia felt dizzy. She looked at Yunjian, only to find that Yunjian had split into 2 figures, 3 figures. "Yunjian, why are there so many of you?" Ningxia shook her head. She was dizzy, and she felt that she couldn't exert any strength. "Me too." Yunjian felt that the gaze outside the door became sharper. She wobbled for a while, and after a while, she laid down on the sofa. Ningxia saw Yunjian lying down, and she suddenly felt scared. Then, she quickly ran to Yunjian and shook Yunjian hard. Yunjian, what's wrong with you? Don't scare me. What's going on? Why do I feel more and more dizzy?" As soon as Ningxia said the last word, her voice stopped. Then, her head shook again, and she directly fell to the ground. Aunt Hong, who had been squatting at the door for a while, saw this. She directly pushed the door open and entered. Because she was afraid that Yunjian and Ningxia were not unconscious, Aunt Hong rushed to Yunjian and Ningxia and shook them. She asked nervously even though she knew the answer, "Wake up, wake up. Little girl, what's wrong with you?" In order to verify that Yunjian and Ningxia had completely fainted, Aunt Hong also reached out to scratch Yunjian and Ningxia's stomach and under their arms. Ordinary people were very sensitive to these 2 places. Aunt Hong scratched, but she didn't see any reaction from Yunjian and Ningxia. At this time, she put away her very nervous look and shouted at the door, "Come in." Immediately, 2 women came in and moved Yunjian and Ningxia to another place. Aunt Hong basically called women to do things, such as moving the unconscious Yunjian and Ningxia to another place. Of course, this was to not attract attention. Tick-tock, 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 the sound of water was leaking. This was a dark basement where no sunlight could be seen. In one part of the basement, there were still water droplets. These water droplets dripped down, covering a large area of the basement floor. Yunjian had already woken up. Or to put it another way, she had not fainted since she was unconscious. At this moment, Yunjian's whole body was tightly tied up with hemp rope. She looked around and could clearly tell that this was not the Royal Nightclub's territory, but a basement. However, the basement was not in the Royal Nightclub. There were many teenage girls tied up around Yunjian. At a glance, there were at least 20 of them. Ningxia was back to back with her back to back. At this time, Ningxia had not woken up. Sob, sob, sob. Not far away, a girl about Yunjian's age was sobbing and shaking. There were also girls who were frightened by the scene in front of them. At this moment, they were desperately asking, "Where is this? Have we been abducted? Then, will we die? Woo!" There were more than 20 teenage girls at the scene. Some of them were not awake, but as long as they were awake, they were crying softly. There was a girl who had been captured for a long time who didn't cry, but said in a depressed tone, "We're finished. The prettier girls who were captured before have been sold. They will sell us." When she said this, the girls around her cried even harder. Yunjian frowned when she heard the cries. She was not nervous, but she was irritated by the girls' cries, so she scoffed in the next second. "Shut up, all of you." Chapter 12:30. The group of girls around her were only in their teens and were very young. They were at the prime of their youth. It was not hard to tell that the dozens of girls around them were like Yunjian and Ningxia, abducted by Andy Hong and her cohorts in a similar way. Among the abducted girls, she was the only one who could be as calm as Yunjian and not be affected by the mourning around her. She forced herself to cry and even yelled, "Shut up, all of you." Obviously, many people around her did not know what was going on, but they were shocked by the gloomy basement in front of them. Especially when they were tied up with ropes, it was like the scene of a kidnapping in the legends. In addition, there was a girl who had been here for a long time who said that the beautiful girls who were abducted before were sold. The girls around her were even more scared. At this time, Yun Jian's shout frightened the people around her. Even the girl who was sobbing just now was so scared that she forced her cries back into her throat. The surroundings quieted down, and only then did Yun Jian close her eyes. She was very clear about her situation. The girls who were abducted around her were very beautiful, and the worst-looking one could be recognized immediately in a crowded street. Since this group of people dared to abduct her, then they had to pay a price. In the darkness, Yun Jian's lips curved into a cold arc. Since she encountered this kind of underground hookup, then, after an unknown amount of time, the crying stopped, and the girls who were awake began to talk to each other. However, from the girls' conversation, Yun Jian could still hear their deep fear. "I've been here for half a month." At this time, a girl spoke with a desperate tone. After pausing for 2 seconds, the girl's voice became slightly trembling. Her throat was hoarse, and her voice sounded like she was about to sob at any time. "I was drugged, and when I woke up, I was here. The girls who were with me before, they were all sold. This is not a place for people to stay. They fed us like animals, and sold them, let a lot of men defile them. We will also be sold like that." At the end, the girl could not help but sob again. The basement was very dark, but the surrounding girls were frightened by the girl's words and began to cry again. Some of them trembled all over, and were so scared that they could not turn over and move. Yun Jian slightly frowned, and in the next second, her closed eyes instantly opened. If the basement was brightly lit, the girls around her would definitely be shocked by Yun Jian's piercing gaze. When Yun Jian opened her eyes, the door to the basement opened abruptly. She had sensed that someone was coming. At this time, a dim yellow light flashed in, and then a fat old woman wearing a red cheongsam walked in. Then, a few well-dressed middle-aged men walked in. Just by looking at their appearance, one would think that they were successful businessmen. There were also a few strong men following behind them. The basement's light was suddenly turned on, and the people who had not seen light for a long time could not open their eyes for a while. At this time, Aunt Hong walked toward Yun Jian, her butt swaying left and right. The surrounding girls who were tied up shrunk their bodies in fear. Aunt Hong brought that group of people directly to Yun Jian. Then Aunt Hong suddenly stepped aside, and respectfully pointed at Yun Jian to a well-dressed middle-aged man standing at the front, and said, "Look, this chick is really hard to come by in 1,000 years. Chapter 12:31. Andy Hong had already doubted whether Yun Jian was still a virgin with the previous middle-aged man. However, when she was introduced to this middle-aged man who looked like a successful person, she still said the same thing. There was only one reason for this. She hoped that Yun Jian could be sold for a good price. In Andy Hong's place, she called these girls who were deceived as goods. Andy Hong and her group did not treat these girls as human beings. To be honest, after being deceived into this place, even if they wanted to seek death, there would always be someone watching over them. The girls who were completely controlled didn't even have the right to choose death. They could only become puppets for Andy Hong and the others to make money for the men to laugh at. This was the side of the royal nightclub that people did not know about. At the same time, it was also one of the royal nightclub's major means of earning money. Even as a woman, Auntie Hong could not help but be attracted to Yun Jian, not to mention this middle-aged man. This middle-aged man's surname was Jia, and he was called Boss Jia. Boss Jia was a typical tycoon. He invested in a marine enterprise in Ning City and had contact with some big bosses overseas. Moreover, his family's assets amounted to tens of millions. In 1999, if his family had tens of millions of assets, he would be called a multimillionaire. Even if he became a multimillionaire, he would still be able to occupy a place like Ning City, not to mention Boss Jia. With Boss Jia's achievements, he could be considered as a big shot in Ning City. It was this kind of person that outsiders would never think that he was actually a regular in the royal nightclub that secretly trafficked young girls. Strictly speaking, Boss Jia's eccentricity could be considered as a pedophile. This was because he was already over 50 years old, almost 60 years old. Boss Jia dyed his hair until it was shiny, but the middle of it was bald. His whole body was full of fat, and he looked extremely ugly. Looking at her delicate and pretty face, he could see that her delicate and flawless face was exquisite to the extreme. Boss Jia's mouth was dripping with saliva. Beautiful. 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 Boss Jia used his pig trotters to wipe away the saliva flowing out of his mouth. He shouted 3 times in a row. His round eyes stared at Yun Jian. At the same time, Boss Jia rubbed his hands. How is it? Boss Jia, are you satisfied? Auntie Hong threw a coquettish glance at Boss Jia and said with a smile. Satisfied. Satisfied. I'm so satisfied. Boss Jia's eyes never left Yun Jian. Yun Jian didn't move. The girls who were tied up saw this scene. As long as it didn't involve them, they didn't even dare to make a sound. Auntie Hong, name your price. Boss Jia looked at Yun Jian and rubbed his hands even harder. He couldn't wait to rush up. Aunt Hong curled her lips and said, 500,000. What? 500,000? Just a woman and you are offering 500,000 yuan? Boss Jia was shocked and then exclaimed. Hey, you've seen it for yourself. This chick is so delicate. You should know if she's worth 500,000 or not. If you don't want it, I can sell it to Mr. Yang. The boss Yang that Auntie Hong mentioned was Boss Jia's sworn enemy. As soon as Auntie Hong said this, Boss Jia was unwilling to be at a disadvantage. Okay. 500,000 it is. Pfft. Just as Auntie Hong and Boss Jia were seriously talking about the price, a sneer was heard. At such a serious and dangerous moment, there was still someone laughing. Everyone immediately turned their heads to look. They saw that Yun Jian, who was a commodity, wasn't afraid at all. She was the one who had sneered earlier. You. What are you laughing at? Auntie Hong was shocked by Yun Jian's strange laughter. Then, she questioned. However, she heard Yun Jian reply with a smile without fear. Instead of estimating my value here, why don't you talk to me about how you want to die? As soon as Yun Jian finished speaking, everyone around was stunned. Yun Jian was in a disadvantageous position now. Why was she not only not afraid, but also threatening Auntie Hong and Boss Jia? This time, not only Auntie Hong and Boss Jia were stunned, but the group of girls who were cowering around were also dumbfounded. Especially when Yun Jian scolded the girls at the beginning. At first, the girls thought that she was just annoyed. Who knew that she even dared to talk back to Auntie Hong? When did she untie the rope? Auntie Hong. This is. Boss Jia looked at Yun Jian. He was so scared that he took 2 steps back. He was just about to ask Auntie Hong what was going on. However, he saw that Yun Jian had already rushed over here. You. What are you trying to do? Boss Jia was scared out of his wits. He quickly retreated. However, just as he took 2 steps back, Yun Jian had already stepped on the ground with 1 foot and jumped. In the next second, she kicked out horizontally. She kicked Boss Jia's abdomen at lightning speed, sending Boss Jia flying out. He then slammed into a wall in the basement. Finally, his entire body twitched and fell to the ground. Yun Jian steadied herself and curled her lips into a smile. She coldly looked at the group of people in front of her who were instantly in a mess. They were all scared silly by her kick. She immediately crossed her arms and said lazily, "Oh, right. I forgot to tell you. I'm an advanced special forces soldier in the army." When these words came out, not to mention the girls present, even Auntie Hong straightened her back and looked at Yun Jian in shock. The reaction of the surrounding people was the same. They all looked at her in a daze. Chapter 1233. Other than shock, the biggest reason was that Auntie Hong and her group were underground traders, and the people they sold were living people. Under such circumstances, Auntie Hong and her group were usually most afraid of running into the police. Even if they ran into the police on the streets, Auntie Hong would usually avoid them, not to mention running into the police directly. The moment Yun Jian said that she was an advanced special forces soldier, coupled with her kick that sent Mr. Jia flying. Even if Auntie Hong did not believe that Yun Jian was an advanced special forces soldier, there was no way to explain how a teenage girl who looked weak and delicate could have such abilities. Unless it was like what she said, that she was an advanced special forces soldier, but how old was she? She was only in her teens. How could she be, You're an advanced special forces soldier? Auntie Hong pointed at Yun Jian and exclaimed in disbelief. As she spoke, Auntie Hong's voice was hoarse. What do you think? Yun Jian did not show any signs of fear when facing Auntie Hong and the group of tall and burly men standing behind her. On the contrary, after she said that, she walked towards Auntie Hong and her group. What are you trying to do? It was obvious that Yun Jian's kick that sent Mr. Jia flying was definitely practiced, so when Auntie Hong saw Yun Jian walking towards her, she led the burly men behind her and retreated a few steps. It was obvious that Yun Jian's skills earlier gave Auntie Hong a sense of danger. Yun Jian walked towards Auntie Hong under the agitated and shocked gazes of the girls who were still tied up. As she walked, Yun Jian gently raised her hand. Auntie Hong was so scared that she thought that Yun Jian was going to use some kind of weapon, so she nervously retreated 3 steps in the same second. On the other side, Yun Jian stretched out her hand and gently pulled out the only shabby wooden stool in the basement. Then, she sat on it. After she sat down on the wooden stool, she reached out to tuck her excess hair behind her ear. Then, she curled her lips into a devilish smile. Actually, I originally wouldn't meddle in your business. After a pause, she suddenly raised her eyes slightly and continued, I'm not sure. But since you've invited me here and put on such a wonderful show in front of me, I'll be sorry if I don't give you a reward. Yun Jian's words were flat, making it hard to tell whether she was happy or sad. However, when such calm words came out from the mouth of such a little girl, it more or less shocked everyone present. At this moment, Auntie Hong was filled with regret. She thought she had found a treasure this time, but who would have thought, bang. The door that was just closed was kicked open in the next second. The kick outside the door was full of strength. The door was kicked fiercely, and the entire door flew out. The door was even broken. Everyone present was so shocked that they were shocked. When they turned around to look, they saw a handsome man dressed in black casual clothes walking in with a frown on his face. The handsome man attracted everyone's attention as soon as he walked in. After CE entered, he frowned and looked around. Finally, he saw Yun Jian sitting on the wooden stool. His frown loosened at this moment. It was only then that CE came over. The surrounding people trembled in fear from CE's aura. His action of kicking open the door was shocking and unexpected. Chapter 1234. CE's face didn't show any emotion, but Mo Sen and the other two, who were familiar with CE, were quite clear. Their young master was truly enraged this time. You. Who are you? Aunt Hong was frightened by the sudden entrance of CE and the others, and she took a few steps back. Especially when she heard Ce say the word kill, Aunt Hong had an illusion that she had provoked a very frightening big shot. Old woman, you don't need to know who we are. Shuang chuckled and took the lead to walk over. His handsome face was covered by a long scar at the bottom of his neck, which greatly reduced his handsome face. Aunt Hong was so frightened that she retreated again and again. Don't talk nonsense with her, just kill this group of people. Mo Sen was already walking over. Mo Sen's legs were very slender, especially from the back. His figure and appearance were simply an existence that girls yearned for day and night. Mo Sen had just taken 2 steps over here, when the few burly men behind Aunt Hong took 2 steps back. In the next second, a sharp killing intent flashed in Mo Sen's eyes. In the next breath, in this airtight space, everyone only felt a gust of wind. When they came back to their senses, they saw that Mo Sen had already flashed past those burly men at some point in time. Everyone almost didn't notice when he made his move, and only saw those burly men suddenly spurt out a mouthful of old blood. In the next moment, the few burly men fell to the ground with their backs facing the ground. In a short while, they stopped breathing. After Mo Sen killed these people, he returned to Lin Wei's side. Lin Wei was the strongest among the 4 leaders, but he didn't make a move. That was because these people in front of him didn't even have the qualifications to make him make a move. Mo Sen stood beside Lin Wei. But he saw that Shuang had already walked over to Aunt Hong. Ah! You dared to kill them. How dare you? You! Aunt Hong was so scared that she couldn't form words. But Shuang was gradually approaching Aunt Hong. As Shuang approached Aunt Hong, he made tsk sounds. In the end, Shuang said to Aunt Hong, "You old woman, why did you have to capture our young madam? Do you think you can still live after capturing our young madam? Tsk. You already have half a foot in the coffin, yet you're still coming out to harm others." After saying that, Shuang gently pinched his chin with his slender hand and looked at Aunt Hong with a playful expression. Auntie Hong gradually retreated towards the group of girls. After retreating to a place where there was no escape, Aunt Hong directly knelt down in front of Shuang. "I beg you, please don't kill me. Don't kill him." When she said the last word, Auntie Hong suddenly grabbed a young girl beside her, and threw the young girl directly into Shuang's arms. This young girl's hands and feet were tied up, and at this moment, Auntie Hong had directly thrown her into Shuang's arms, causing her to be unable to stand firm. Aunt Hong's eyes narrowed. She suddenly jumped up and ran to the side towards the basement's entrance. This Auntie Hong had a bit of strength. Yun Jian narrowed her eyes. She hadn't noticed it before. However, Aunt Hong was destined to not be able to get out of this basement's door today. Lin Wei casually flung his hand, and everyone only saw a golden light flash past. No one saw what he had flung out. They only saw Aunt Hong, who was running towards the basement's entrance, thinking that she was about to escape from the devil's claws, suddenly freeze. In the next second, blood spurted out from her mouth and nose, and in a short while, she directly fell to the ground and didn't make a sound. Chapter 1235. Lin Wei helped Shuang kill Auntie Hong. When Auntie Hong fell to the ground, her eyes were wide open. She could not believe that she had been killed just like that. Her best years had yet to come. Her time of enjoying life had yet to come. But now, she had disappeared from this world forever. However, Auntie Hong did not feel any shame at the moment of her death. She had been a human trafficker all her life. She had abducted many young girls, causing many families to be ruined. She had also caused many young girls to be defiled by men in their 50s and 60s. In the end, they were in so much pain that they wished they were dead. There were even some who could not bear such a life. In the end, they chose to end their lives in the most miserable way possible. Auntie Hong deserved to die. She deserved to die 10,000 times. Shuang did not care about what happened to Auntie Hong. Just now, Auntie Hong had thrown a girl at Shuang. The reason was to distract Shuang. A smart person like Shuang would not have fallen for such a trick. However, the girl that Auntie Hong had thrown at him was tied up. Her feet were not steady, so she almost slipped. Shuang did not know what was going on with him. He just grabbed the girl. Originally, if Shuang encountered such a situation, even if the other party was a sexy beauty with big breasts and big buttocks, he would have directly avoided them. He did not know if it was because of Si Yi's influence, but he had no interest in those sexy beauties. However, this time, the girl that Auntie Hong had thrown at him had a fragrant scent coming from her body. That scent was like mint. It was fresh and elegant. It gave people a feeling that they would unconsciously want to pull this girl into their arms. Therefore, Shuang pulled the girl into his arms. Under the dim yellow light in the basement, Shuang was able to see the girl's appearance clearly. She was a beautiful girl who looked like a doll. She was about 16 or 17 years old. Her long and narrow eyelashes fluttered up and down. Just by looking at her, people could not help but want to cherish her. Not to mention men. This was the first time Shuang had seen a girl who looked like a doll. The girl's body also had a fragrance. It was a light mint smell. The smell was very light, but it was enough to make Shuang stunned. While Shuang was still in a daze, Si Yi had already walked in front of Yunjian. Although his facial expression was the same as usual, Yunjian could feel that Si Yi was really angry this time. Yunjian stood up from the wooden stool. Just as she stood up, she was pulled into Si Yi's embrace. Even though he knew that she would be fine, he was still worried when he found out that Yunjian had disappeared. Xiao Jian. What should I do with you? I really want to rub you into my bone marrow and make you follow me for the rest of my life, never leaving me again. Si Yi caressed Yunjian's long black hair as he spoke softly. Yunjian's heart was touched. In Yunjian's previous life, she had always been alone when she went on missions. Now, Si Yi's words warmed her heart. She reached out and hugged Si Yi back. The matter here was left to Mo Sun and the other two. Ever since Ningxia was locked up here with Yunjian, she had not woken up. Of course, this was a stroke of luck because Ningxia had one less bad memory in her life. In the end, Mo Sun contacted the local police in Serene City and arrested all the human traffickers led by Auntie Hong. This group of innocent girls had been saved. Shuang, Mo Sun, and Lin Wei were on their way back to the Ning family. Shuang took 2 steps before he turned to look at the girl who had followed him all the way. The girl was holding an old cardboard box. When she saw him turn to look at her, she stopped and kept a 5-meter distance from him while looking at Shuang innocently. Shuang rubbed his forehead and turned to ask her, "What do you want?" The girl was the one who had been pulled into Shui Ying's arms just now. Chapter 1236. When the girl's words fell, Shuang almost missed a step. Shuang finally hugged Mo Sun, who was standing beside him, and steadied his footing. Cough cough. It was the first time Shuang heard such words. He choked when he swallowed and immediately coughed twice. Sure, he's willing. Mo Sun, who had been silent all this time, suddenly reached out and patted Shui Ying's back, and then said to the girl with a smile. After saying that, Mo Sun smiled evilly. It was rare for him to joke like today. After saying that, Mo Sun pulled away Shui Ying's hand that was around his shoulder, and then turned around and left with Lin Wei. Halfway through, Mo Sun also left Shuang with a sentence that people didn't understand. Don't bully a little girl. After saying that, Mo Sun smiled evilly, which was extremely inconsistent with his previous calm appearance. After smiling evilly, Mo Sun curled his lips and left with Lin Wei. Shuang, who was standing in place, simply wanted to grab Mo Sun and Lin Wei and beat them up. They actually left him behind. However, Shuang didn't dare to beat Lin Wei, let alone Senator Mo Sun and Lin Wei had the best relationship, perhaps because their personalities were similar. Shuang dared to guarantee that if he went to beat Mo Sun, Lin Wei would definitely intervene. He felt that he had become a loner. Just as he was thinking this, Mo Sun and Lin Wei had already left quickly. Shui Ying's face darkened into a line. He turned his head and glared fiercely at the girl. It was all because of her. If it weren't for her, how could Immerse and Lin Wei, these two ungrateful guys, leave him behind? Shuang turned his eyes and glared fiercely at the girl. The girl was so scared by Shui Ying's glare that she shrank her thin body. Shuang looked at the girl's thin body and lowered his eyes. In the end, he still withdrew his sharp edge and turned to walk towards the Ningxia house on the main road. After taking 2 steps, the girl immediately followed. As long as Shuang stopped, the girl also stopped. She didn't seem to dare to come forward. From beginning to end, she was about 5 meters behind Shuang. In the end, Shuang touched his forehead and simply let her follow him all the way. The Royal Nightclub closed down overnight. Not only the Royal Nightclub in Serene City, but all the Royal Nightclub chains in Z Nation declared bankruptcy overnight. This incident would cause a huge uproar in Z country, especially among those big bosses who frequented nightclubs. However, no one was able to find out why the Royal Nightclub closed down. Of course, these were all things that happened later. At this moment, Yun Jian and Ce had just arrived at the entrance of Ningxia. Ningxia had already been brought back to the Ning family by Ce's men. Yun Jian's explanation was that Ningxia had drunk some alcohol at the Royal Nightclub and fainted because she couldn't hold her liquor. In fact, Ningxia did not know how to drink. So Ningxia's mother helped Ningxia back to her room to rest. Yun Jian and Ce stood at the gate of their house in Ningxia and looked at the stars in the sky. After a while, Immerse and Lin Wei came back. Not long after Immerse and Lin Wei entered the house, Yun Jian stood there and saw Shuang walk in with a sullen face. Behind Shuang was a 16 or 17-year-old girl. The girl was holding a cardboard box in her hands. She lowered her head and looked very shy. "You're still following me." Shuang touched his forehead and shouted somewhat impetuously, "Damn, I'm not going to care about this anymore." Shuang then entered the house. After entering the house, Shuang was reluctant to leave, so he hid behind the door and narrowed his eyes to look over. He saw the girl holding the cardboard box and looking at Yun Jian timidly. Yun Jian looked her up and down and then asked, "What's your name?" Yun Jian had seen this girl in the basement before. She was also abducted by Auntie Hong. Chapter 1237. As Si Luo spoke, she hugged the box tightly with her bony hands and lowered her head, looking a little scared. Yun Jian narrowed her eyes and stared at Si Luo again. She scanned Si Luo from head to toe and pursed her lips. "Aren't you going home?" As she spoke, Yun Jian's eyes flashed with a sharp light. She seemed to have a new idea. Si Luo didn't look up after hearing Yun Jian's words. She shrank back and shook her head. "I don't have a home anymore, then are you willing to follow me?" Yun Jian quickly continued. Yun Jian's words made Si Luo look up immediately. Someone was willing to take her in? Is this real? Si Luo held the box and pushed it into her arms. Then, she stared at Yun Jian with her expressive eyes. Her voice trembled. "Can you take me in? Can you really take me in?" Si Luo looked like she couldn't believe that Yun Jian was really willing to take her in. Her eyes widened as if they could speak. Yun Jian nodded and narrowed her eyes. "Sure, but I have a condition." "I agree. I agree. As long as you can feed me and let me live, I'll do anything." Si Luo almost knelt down in front of Yun Jian in gratitude. If one were to take a closer look, they could clearly see that Si Luo's clothes were in tatters and were extremely dirty. Her face was also covered in dirt, and she looked like a little beggar. If it wasn't for her doll-like face and her dirty clothes that couldn't hide her minty scent, she really did look like a refugee who escaped from a beggar's nest. Yun Jian only narrowed her eyes slightly when she saw Si Luo. Of course, she wouldn't take anyone in for no reason. Instead, wait. An abrupt male voice interrupted what Yun Jian was about to say. Yun Jian raised her brows. She looked at Ce, who was standing beside her and looking at her dotingly. She turned around and saw Shuang, who had been hiding behind the door, walking back. "Young madam, ahem." Shuang coughed when he realized that he had walked out rashly. Yunjian narrowed her eyes, but Shuang continued, "Young madam, she followed me back." Yunjian immediately understood what Shuang meant. "You want to take her in?" It was obvious that Yunjian had taken a liking to Si Luo. Other things aside, Si Luo looked frail and weak, but Yunjian could tell that she was a good seedling despite her frail appearance. Someone who could catch Yunjian's eye naturally had their own strengths. Take Si Luo for example. Yunjian was sure that if she trained her personally, a good seedling like Si Luo would definitely become a high-ranking member of the Kosha mercenaries. She might even surpass Snake Lizard in time. But Shuaying's sudden appearance was, "Yes, young madam." Shuang didn't hesitate at all. "All right." Yunjian didn't force him. After agreeing, Yunjian turned to look at Si Luo. She narrowed her eyes and said to Si Luo, "If you feel that it's not good to follow him, you're welcome to look for me anytime." Yunjian winked at Si Luo. It was rare for her to be so cold and arrogant. Si Luo hugged the cardboard box and shrank back, but she nodded fervently. Chapter 1238. When Yunjian saw Shuang beckoning to Si Luo was obviously afraid of him. Or perhaps, Si Luo was afraid of the long scar on Shuaying's neck. In spite of it, Si Luo mustered his courage and went to Shuang with the cardboard box. Watching Si Luo and Shuang enter Ningxia house, Yunjian could not help smiling. What an interesting girl. No matter how interesting she is, she's not as attractive to me as my Xiao Jian. Ce looked at Yunjian with squinted eyes, his hand gripping Yunjian's hand tightly. His words made Yunjian blush again. She patted Ce's playful palm lightly and turned to enter Ningxia house. Si Luo's arrival was a nuisance to Ningxia Mama as she had to prepare another room for Si Luo. It was fortunate that Ningxia house was not short of rooms. Si Luo had been standing in Ningxia house with his precious cardboard box, but when he saw that Ningxia Mama was preparing a room for him, he walked out with the cardboard box. "Thank you. Don't trouble yourself, I can sleep at the bridge nearby for the night." Si Luo was about to leave the house with the cardboard box as he spoke. Yunjian raised a brow at the sight. A certain nerve in the bottom of his heart was fiercely touched. In her past life, Yunjian was abducted when she was young. She was abducted when she was 5. She was supposed to be a 5-year-old child who lay in her parents' arms and did not have to think about anything. However, Yunjian only remembered that her parents in her past life had lost her when she was 5. Before she was abducted and joined in Hun group, Yunjian had been a beggar for a period of time after she was separated from her parents. It was not an exaggeration to call her a beggar. Everyone had a past that was not glamorous. Everyone had grown up from nothing. She was only 5 years old then and had lost her parents' protection. Yunjian went out to beg in the day and slept at the bridge or even the dog hole at night. If a kind-hearted person gave her a newspaper to warm her up in the cold night, it was already a blessing. That kind of life was simply not something a human could live through, but under the premise that one's life was not guaranteed, it was already considered very good. She had seen Si Luo's attire just now, and what Si Luo had just said. What kind of past could make a young girl who was in the middle of puberty so calmly say, "I can sleep on the nearby bridge for a night"? Countless teenagers who were sheltered by their parents flaunted their prowess, but who would have thought that some people who lived at the bottom of society even had problems eating enough food to survive? Yunjian's heart skipped a beat when she saw Si Luo walking out of the house. She instinctively wanted to speak up. Unexpectedly, another male voice was faster than her. Shuang, who was standing beside Si Luo, grabbed Si Luo's hand. He did not mind that her hand was dirty. Shuang forced herself to calm down and growled at Si Luo. "You are my disciple now." "My disciple is sleeping at the bridgehead? If word of this gets out, where am I supposed to hide my face?" Shuang did not want to reveal his identity. He grabbed Si Luo and shouted at him, not minding that Si Luo's hand was dirty. Mo Sen and Lin Wei had already gone to sleep. If the two of them were standing there, they would definitely be shocked by Shui Ying's words. Shui Ying was the infamous shameless king internationally. He represented an Han group in all kinds of activities. Since when did he care about his face? He was even rumored to be the most shameless person in the world. And today, he even emphasized that where was he supposed to hide his face? Pfft, don't make me laugh. Chapter 1239. Si Luo's hand was held by Shui Ying. She looked up at Shui Ying from a close distance, but when she saw the long scar on Shui Ying's neck, she shrank back and lowered her head. She was afraid. This was normal. The scar on Shui Ying's neck was very deep, and it was because of this deep scar that Shui Ying's looks were greatly reduced. In terms of appearance, Shui Ying was the most handsome among the 4 leaders. Of course, even so, Shui Ying was the most handsome among the 4 leaders, but because of this scar, many beauties dared not get close to him. You don't have to stay at the bridge. From today onwards, you won't have to live the same life as before. Yun Jian's voice was heard in the next breath. As soon as Yun Jian's voice was heard, Si Luo looked up at Yun Jian gratefully. Don't look at me like that. I'm only helping you because there's something to gain. Yun Jian did not say the last part of her sentence. She, Yun Jian, was not a good person. If there was nothing to gain, to be honest, she would not help Si Luo even if he knelt down in front of her. Don't blame her for being ruthless. This was how the world worked. If you were not strong, no one would pity you. Thank you. Si Luo thanked him anyway. If one looked closely, one could even see a trace of tears in her eyes. Yun Jian nodded and did not say anything else. In the end, Ningxia's mother prepared a room for Si Luo. Ningxia's family was rich, so their rooms were villas with toilets in every room. It was like a hotel. Ningxia's mother pitied Si Luo and even taught him how to run the bathwater. Yun Jian stood aside and watched as Ningxia's mother taught Si Luo. In the end, Si Luo took a hot shower and changed into Qin Yu's clothes. Si Luo and Qin Yu were about the same height, but Si Luo was skinnier than Qin Yu. He was so skinny that only his bones were left. Although Qin Yu's clothes were a little too big for Si Luo, it was just right. When they were done, Shui Ying and the rest had already gone to bed. The next day, Yun Jian woke up early in the morning as she planned to board a large cruise ship from Ning City's harbor to the boat island. When Yun Jian woke up, Qin Yu and Si Luo were already up. When Yun Jian came downstairs, she saw Qin Yu and Si Luo chatting together. They seemed to be getting along well. Si Luo had washed her dusty body yesterday and changed into Qin Yu's clothes. Her beggar-like appearance had completely disappeared. Even Yun Jian couldn't help but take a few more glances at Si Luo. After washing up, the faint mint scent on Si Luo's body became even stronger. Her doll-like face was naturally beautiful. Even Ningxia's mother couldn't help praising her. What a delicate little girl. In the morning, Ningxia's mother, Qin Yiru, and Mrs. Yang made breakfast together. When Ce, Shui Ying and the other 2 came down, Shui Ying and the other 2 were so shocked by Si Luo's current appearance that they stopped in their tracks. Shui Ying, in particular, did not expect Si Luo to be so pretty after changing into a white dress. Ce was unfazed. No matter how pretty a girl was, she could not beat his Xiao Jian. Ce was not even in the mood to look at Si Luo. He went straight to Yun Jian and held her hand. Wow! What a pretty Jijia! When Xiao Yunzhu, Duanli, and Duanya came down from upstairs, Xiao Yunzhu yelped when he saw Si Luo and wanted to run to her. At the same time, Xiao Yunzhu opened his arms wide like he was asking for a hug. Hello, Jijia. Xiao Yunzhu was halfway there when he saw his elder sister, Yun Jian, standing not too far away. Xiao Yunzhu suddenly felt like he was lifted up. Chapter 1240. Little brat, have you eaten breakfast? Shuang lifted Xiao Yunzhu up in front of Yunjian as if his life depended on it. Then, when he saw Xiao Yunzhu looking up at him, he spoke in a muffled voice. Xiao Yunzhu shook his small body, but realized that Shuang had a death grip on him. Xiao Yunzhu pouted and looked at Ce unwillingly. Then, he complained to Ce, Big brother Ce, Big brother Wang Er is bullying me. He won't let me down. I'm in pain. Big sister will be sad if she sees this. Xiao Yunzhu knew how to talk. He knew that Ce cared about Yunjian, so he purposely said this. The meaning of this sentence aside, just the mention of Big brother Wang Er was enough to make Shui Ying's eyes darken. When he heard Xiao Yunzhu call him Big brother Wang Er, Shuang had the urge to run to Yulong mainland and kill Adam. That rascal had given him the image of Big brother Wang Er in front of Xiao Yunzhu. Even now, Xiao Yunzhu refused to change the way he addressed him. Sensing Ci's murderous glare, Shuang quickly let go of Xiao Yunzhu's hand. Xiao Yunzhu, who was let go, did not run to see Luo. Instead, he ran back and reached out to hold Duan Li's hand. Little chestnut, we can go to the beach later. Yay yay yay. Yunjian, who stood not too far away, merely smiled at the sight without losing her composure. Shuang, Mo-sen, and Lin Wei did not plan to go to the beach. They had already gone to the beach, especially Hawaii. They did not want to go there anymore. Si Luo also said that he did not want to go to the beach. To Si Luo, her previous life was worse than the lowest class of society. Now that she was suddenly asked to go on a holiday, how could she accept it? Before setting off, Yunjian stood at the entrance. She glanced sideways into the house and saw Shuang standing not far away. Mo-sen said to Shuang in a rare teasing tone, "Didn't you say you were going to the beach?" It was rare for Mo-sen to tease someone. With this tease, Shuang was ridiculed to the point of not being able to reply. Finally, Shuang replied, "I don't want to go at the last minute." Isn't that normal? Shui Ying's words made Mo-sen smile. It's very normal. Even Lin Wei put on a fake smile and said these three words. Ning City Cruise Pier. Ningxiao's mother knew the people who worked at the cruise terminal, so she bought some better tickets for Yunjian and the others through the back door. Ningxiao's mother did not come with them, but she got Ningxia to accompany Yunjian and the rest to Zhou Island. Mrs. Yang's family was the only one who came along, followed by Qin Yiru and Gu Junjian, Yun Yi, Qin Yu, Xiao Yunzhu, and lastly, Yunjian and Ce. There was a lot of traffic when they boarded the ship. There was a queue to be checked before boarding the ship. Zhou Island was no doubt a tourist destination, so there were a lot of people. It took more than an hour to queue up and board the ship. There were a lot of people in the queue. Ce took advantage of his height to hug Yunjian the whole time, protecting Yunjian in his arms. He did not let the people around them step on her or touch her body because of the crowd. When they boarded the ship, their seats were fixed. They used their tickets to secure their seats. At least, this was the case on the cruise. Yunjian and Ce found their seats and sat down. When Qin Yiru and Gu Junjian found their tickets, they happened to see a couple sitting there. When Qin Yiru saw this, she glanced at Gu Junjian, then went up to them and said politely, "Hello, may I know if you're sitting in the wrong seat? Our seats are here." Chapter 1241. A Western-looking woman in her mid-20s who was dressed skimpily with her shoulders exposed was holding the arm of a man with a crew cut who looked like a ruffian. The man, who looked about the same age, was sitting on the seats that should have belonged to Qin Yiru and Gu Junjian. This very revealing woman was the one who yelled at Qin Yiru. Let's not talk about the woman's tone to Qin Yiru. Let's talk about the last sentence she said to Qin Yiru, "We'll be at Zhou Island soon anyway." It would take at least 45 minutes to get to Zhou Island from the pier in Ning City. This was under the condition that there was no obstruction. Zhou Island was an island in the middle of the ocean. In other words, it was a floating piece of land in the ocean. It was a small island. Zhou Island was located on a small island and was surrounded by the ocean. Moreover, Zhou Island was surrounded by the ocean. People who came here for tourism could understand the true meaning of the ocean. However, from Ning City to Zhou Island, there was a large ship carrying hundreds of people. It would take at least 45 minutes to sail slowly from Ning City to Zhou Island. If there was an unexpected situation on the way, it would take at least an hour to sail. Even so, there were still a lot of tourists coming. As a result, there were not enough ships sailing between Ning City's pier and Zhou Island. Therefore, there was a situation where people sat according to their seats. Some people could not get a seat and could only stand all the way. Ningxiao Mama had friends at Ning City's pier, so it was not surprising that she could get a seat. Obviously, these two young people did not get a seat, so they shamelessly occupied Qin Yiru and Gu Yunjian's seats. This woman's words made Qin Yiru frown. Although Qin Yiru did not like to look for trouble, she was not the kind of person who would be led by the nose by others and not dare to say half a word. Therefore, when Qin Yiru heard this woman's words, she refuted on the spot, "This beautiful woman, this seat was reserved when we bought the ticket, so please make way." Qin Yiru also raised her voice. After all, to Qin Yiru, she was weak, but when something that should have belonged to her was taken away by someone else and the other party had no kinship with her, she would still ask for it back. "I say, old woman, are you crazy? Will we die if we sit on this seat?" The woman was still aggressive. The most infuriating thing was that as soon as the woman's aggressive words fell, the man sitting next to the woman peeled a grape and personally fed it to the woman. The man glared at Qin Yiru and then comforted the woman, "Honey, don't mind them. I think this woman is going through menopause. You guys." Qin Yiru listened as the couple in front of her became more and more ridiculous. As long as she was a human, she would definitely get angry. Gu Junjian just held Qin Yiru's hand and wanted to reason with them, but a beautiful hand held Qin Yiru down first. Yun Jian took 2 steps towards them and held Qin Yiru's hand. Then, she said to Gu Junjian, "Dad, bring Mom to our seat first." Yun Jian had already changed her way of addressing Gu Junjian as Dad. When Gu Junjian heard Yun Jian's words, he decisively pulled Qin Yiru's hand and walked towards Yun Jian and Siyi's seat. At this moment, Yun Jian crossed her arms in front of her chest and looked at the young couple. She didn't say anything. She just stared at the young couple with her eyes. The young couple originally acted as if nothing had happened and they were minding their own business. However, after being stared at by Yun Jian for a long time, the woman began to panic and scold Yun Jian, "Are you crazy? What are you looking at?" Just as the woman said this, Yun Jian suddenly strode forward. Under the shocked gazes of the surrounding passengers, she suddenly reached out and grabbed the woman's hair. Before the woman could react, she dragged her hair down from her seat and threw her far away. The woman was not prepared at all and was directly smashed to the ground, rolling a circle on the ground. However, Yun Jian suddenly clapped her hands and stepped on the woman's seat. Then, she said to the man. Chapter 1242. The man was shocked by Yun Jian's sudden action of pulling the woman out of her seat and throwing her to the ground. By the time he came back to his senses, Yun Jian had already stepped on the woman's seat and spoke to him in a cold tone. The man gulped. He didn't immediately stand up and give up his seat, nor did he immediately help his girlfriend who was thrown to the ground by Yun Jian. Instead, he was fascinated by Yun Jian's beautiful and delicate face. He didn't notice it earlier, but now the man saw it. The couple actually had such a delicate daughter? Wasn't this girl too beautiful? He was almost mesmerized. The man swallowed hard. Today, Yun Jian was wearing a very short black top, and this black top was form-fitting. It wrapped around Yun Jian's full upper body incisively and vividly. The neckline was a little low, and Yun Jian's breasts were very full. At this moment, they were wrapped in a tight shirt, coupled with her slender waist and beautiful appearance. As long as it was a man, he would be attracted to her. The man didn't care about his girlfriend at all. He was completely attracted to Yun Jian, and he couldn't even speak at this moment. Even after hearing Yunjian's threatening words, the man still had an indescribable desire to tease Yunjian. The man didn't care about his girlfriend at all. He even flipped his crew cut very handsomely and was about to look at Yunjian with an expression that he thought was charming to death. At this moment, the deck of the ship suddenly shook twice. The entire large cruise ship suddenly shook violently twice, as if it had encountered a big wave. The entire ship swayed. With this shake, the man couldn't stand still. After being swayed back and forth, he suddenly realized that Yunjian was standing in front of him, and that pair of full breasts were swaying in front of him. The man suddenly had an idea. He suddenly wanted to use the force of the ship's shaking to pretend that he had accidentally jumped into Yunjian's chest. The man thought so. In the next moment, he planned to jump into Yunjian's arms as if he was using the rocking force of the boat. Just as the man was about to do so, he had already pounced on Yunjian. But when he was 30 centimeters away from Yunjian, he saw a large palm suddenly appear on Yunjian's slender waist. The large hand grabbed Yunjian's slender waist and pulled Yunjian over. The man was stunned, but at this moment, he had already fallen towards the place where Yunjian was just now. If he continued to fall, he might just fall over. However, it was unrealistic for him to fall because when the man fell towards Yunjian's position, a slender thigh entered his sight. She lifted her slender leg from the ground and kicked the man's abdomen in a way that couldn't be seen by the naked eye. The man saw with his own eyes that the slender leg kicked his abdomen, and then his body flew out dozens of meters away. At this moment, the man felt that the breakfast he had eaten this morning was about to be kicked out of his mouth. The moment the man was sent flying, he saw that in the distance, the person who had kicked his slender leg was holding onto the girl he had tried to get close to, but couldn't even touch the corner of her clothes. The people standing around the cruise ship were frightened by Siyi's actions. Everyone looked up and saw Siyi's dark face. He hugged Yunjian, and his sharp eyes looked as if he wanted to kill the man. You're tuning into the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.